God's chosen ones. Their shocked you knew all along your accuracy left them speechless. Did they really think you couldn't see through their masks? Did they honestly believe your silence meant you were sleeping? Did they actually convince themselves that your stillness was ignorance? You, sitting there right now, maybe in the quiet of your living room or perhaps driving through the city lights, but your spirit, it's been waiting for this moment, waiting for someone to finally say what you've known all along. They thought you were ordinary. They looked at you and saw just another face in the crowd, another soul they could manipulate, another heart they could deceive. But here's the shocking truth they never saw coming. You were never ordinary. You were surveillance wrapped in silence. Listen closely, because what I'm about to reveal will shatter every assumption they made about you. While they performed their charades, their fake smiles, their carefully rehearsed lies, you weren't just watching, you were recording. Not with cameras or devices, but with something far more powerful, a spirit anointed with divine discernment. Your silence wasn't weakness, it was warfare. Your calm wasn't confusion, it was calculation. And now they're terrified because they're realizing the truth. You saw everything, every sideways glance, every whispered conversation they thought you couldn't hear, every manipulation they thought went unnoticed. You caught it all, didn't you? Because when God marks someone as chosen, He doesn't just give them purpose, He gives them eyes that see in the dark. The prophet Jeremiah reminds us, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Jeremiah 1-5. That setting apart, it comes with supernatural perception. It comes with the ability to read hearts like open books. If your heart feels like it's pounding right now, if something deep in your chest is stirring, type 777 in the comments below. That's not just a number, that's a confirmation. That's heaven saying, yes, this message was meant for you. Before we dive deeper into this revelation, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here. Your support, your time, your attention, it all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. Here's what they never understood. Your accuracy wasn't luck, it was divine intelligence. While they thought they were playing chess, you were reading the entire game from a realm they couldn't even see. You didn't guess what was coming, you knew. Because chosen ones don't operate on human instinct, they operate on heavenly insight. By the time this message ends, you'll understand why they're losing sleep over the silence you kept, why your calm has become their chaos, and why your stillness has become their spiritual storm. You were never ordinary, and it's time the world, and you, remembered that truth. How many times did they tell you it was just your imagination? How many years did they gaslight you for seeing what they desperately tried to hide? How long have you carried the weight of knowing truths that others called you crazy for sensing? Dear chosen one, let me tell you something that will shatter the lies they've fed you for decades. Your knowing was never guesswork. It was revelation on silent wings. You've spent a lifetime being told you're too sensitive, too suspicious, reading too much into things. They made you question your own perception, didn't they? Made you wonder if maybe you were the problem. Maybe you were seeing shadows where there was only light. Maybe your gut feelings were just anxiety, your spiritual alerts just paranoia. But here's the truth they feared you'd discover. God doesn't give His chosen ones ordinary eyes. In 2 Kings 6, the king of Aram was furious because every military strategy he planned in secret was somehow known by the king of Israel. His own officers thought there was a spy in their ranks. But listen to what they discovered. Elisha, The prophet who is in Israel tells the king of Israel the very words you speak in your bedroom. 2 Kings 6:12. Elisha wasn't guessing. He wasn't eavesdropping with human ears. He was operating in divine surveillance, the same supernatural discernment that flows through your spirit right now. You were like an owl in the night, quiet, precise, ancient in instinct. While others slept through deception, your spirit stayed vigilant. While they accepted surface stories, your soul dug deeper. Because chosen ones don't just see with their eyes, they see with their spirit. Let me share something that happened just last year. I met Michaela, a grief counselor in her 70s from upstate New York. She told me something that will make your heart race with recognition. "Pastor, I can walk into any room and immediately tell who's truly grieving and who's there for show. It's in their shoulders, how they carry the weight. The real mourners, their shoulders tell a story their words never could." Michaela wasn't trained to read body language. She wasn't studying psychology textbooks. She was operating in the gift of discernment that God plants in His chosen vessels. And just like you, she spent years being told she was reading too much into people. Sound familiar? That tension you feel in your gut when someone's words don't match their spirit. That's not anxiety, beloved. That's your spiritual radar picking up frequencies others can't detect. They hated your accuracy because it exposed their masks. Every time you quietly sensed what they were hiding, every time your spirit caught what their words tried to cover, every time you knew without being told, you were walking in prophetic revelation. The simple believe every word, but the prudent consider well their steps. Proverbs 14:15. God gave you prudent eyes, discerning ears, and a spirit that can't be fooled by religious performances or emotional manipulation. If you've ever felt that tension in your gut and stayed silent anyway, if you've ever known something was wrong before the evidence appeared, drop "I saw it too" in the comments right now. Because you're about to understand why your silence was actually strategic spiritual warfare. Here's what they never told you about being chosen. Your sensitivity isn't a weakness, it's a weapon. Your ability to feel what others miss, to see through facades, to sense deception before it fully forms. That's not a burden. That's your divine assignment. Think about it. How many times have you walked into a room and immediately felt the spiritual temperature? How many times have you met someone and instantly knew something was off, even though they seemed perfectly charming? How many times have you predicted exactly how a situation would unfold, down to the smallest detail? That wasn't luck, dear one. That was the Spirit of God giving you intel from the heavenly realm. But here's where it gets controversial. They don't want you to know how powerful your discernment really is. They've spent years convincing you to doubt what your spirit clearly sees. Because when chosen ones fully understand their spiritual authority, when they stop questioning their God-given perception, when they start moving in confidence rather than confusion, the kingdom of darkness loses its greatest advantage, deception. But when He, the Spirit of truth, comes, He will guide you into all the truth. John 16:13, all the truth, not some of it, not the comfortable parts, all of it. Even the truth that makes others uncomfortable, even the truth they'd rather you didn't see. Your spirit has been documenting everything, every false smile, every manipulative word, every hidden agenda. While they thought you were naive, you were actually conducting a divine investigation. While they believed their masks were secure, your discernment was taking spiritual photographs. And now they're panicking, because they're realizing what you've always known but were afraid to speak. You saw everything. You always have. The question that's burning in their minds right now, the one that's keeping them awake at 3 a.m., is this. What else does the quiet one know? What other secrets have those ancient, discerning eyes collected? But here's what's about to shake you to your core. Your season of silent knowing is ending. Your time of quiet observation is complete. Heaven is about to activate something in you that will make your past discernment look like child's play. Dear chosen one, let me tell you something that will shake you to your core. Your silence was never empty space. It was never weakness. It was never the absence of words. Your silence was a loaded weapon they never saw coming. Think about this moment. Really think about it. You're sitting in that room, aren't you? The room where they thought they had you figured out, where they exchanged those knowing glances, believing you were just another naive soul they could manipulate. But something was happening in that space that none of them understood. Something ancient, something holy, something terrifying. You remember how they clapped, don't you? But the applause came too slowly, like reluctant thunder after lightning that revealed too much. You caught that hesitation, didn't you? That split-second pause that exposed their true feelings. They complimented you, yes, but those compliments came wrapped in thorns, dipped in poison, delivered with smiles that never reached their eyes. And you clocked it all. Every single moment, every false gesture, every calculated word. And you said nothing. Because lions don't roar when cubs pretend to be kings. Let me take you back to the dusty ground of Jerusalem, where religious leaders dragged a broken woman before Jesus, demanding judgment. They wanted a spectacle. They wanted words. They wanted him to speak so they could trap him. But what did Jesus do? He knelt down and wrote in the sand. John 8:6 tells us he wrote, but it doesn't tell us what he wrote. Do you know why? Because sometimes the most powerful message isn't in the words, it's in the silence that surrounds them. While those accusers stood there demanding answers, Jesus let the silence do the work. That holy stillness became a mirror, reflecting their own guilt back at them. One by one they walked away, not because of what he said, but because of what he didn't say. The silence became their judgment, just like yours became theirs. You see, when God's chosen ones go silent, it's not retreat, it's reconnaissance. You weren't hiding. You were gathering intelligence from a realm they couldn't access. While they performed their little dramas, thinking they were the directors of the show, you were receiving downloads from heaven's surveillance system. Think about Joseph in Egypt. Genesis 42:7 tells us that when his brothers came begging for grain, Joseph recognized his brothers, but they did not recognize him. He could have exposed them immediately. He could have shouted his identity and demanded justice right there. But what did he do? He stayed silent. He watched. He waited. That silence wasn't weakness. It was divine strategy. Joseph let them reveal their hearts first. He let them show whether they had changed, whether remorse lived in their souls, whether they were still the same men who threw their brother into a pit. His silence became their test. And in that holy restraint, God's perfect justice was able to unfold. You've walked that same path, haven't you? You've stood in rooms where betrayal hung in the air like smoke, where lies were served up like fine wine, where manipulation was the main course. And you said nothing. You let them think they were winning while heaven was taking notes. But here's what they never understood, and this is where it gets dangerous for them. Your silence wasn't the absence of knowledge. It was the presence of divine authority. Every time they lied to your face, thinking you believed them, your spirit was marking it down in heaven's permanent record. Every time they smiled while stabbing you in the back, heaven's courtroom was building a case. Every time they whispered behind your back, thinking you couldn't hear, the Almighty was listening from his throne. They thought your quietness was ignorance. It was omniscience. They thought your stillness was confusion. It was clarity. They thought your calm was weakness. It was the eye of God's storm. Do you remember that moment when everything shifted? When you finally realized you weren't meant to defend yourself because you were never on trial? When you understood that your silence wasn't protecting you, It was protecting them from the full weight of what you knew. That's when the room changed, isn't it? That's when the atmosphere shifted from their confidence to their confusion, because suddenly they weren't looking at someone they could control. They were looking at someone who had been watching them all along. You never needed proof. You were the proof. The proof that God still plants his chosen ones in strategic places. The proof that heaven still has eyes and ears in rooms where darkness thinks it rules. The proof that silence, when it's holy, can shatter kingdoms. Psalm 46:10 commands us, "Be still and know that I am God." But here's what most people miss, that stillness isn't passive. It's the most active thing you can do. It's partnering with the God who sees all, knows all, and records all. It's letting divine justice build its case, while human injustice hangs itself with its own rope. The silence they mocked is now the silence echoing through their sleepless nights. The stillness they dismissed is now the stillness that haunts their every scheme, because they finally realized what you knew all along. When God's chosen ones go quiet, it's not because they're powerless, it's because they're connected to the ultimate power. And that power, it never forgets, it never sleeps, and it never loses a case. Now they're scrambling, aren't they? Now they're trying to figure out what you know, what you saw, what you remember. But here's the terrifying truth they're just beginning to grasp. You know what they did to you, don't you? They buried you alive, not with dirt and stones, but with something far more cruel: silence. They buried you with whispers behind closed doors, with family gatherings where your chair sat empty, with phone calls that never came. They buried you with the weight of being too old, too set in your ways, too much trouble. But here's what they never understood. God doesn't bury his chosen ones, he plants them. Do you remember David, the boy king who spent years hiding in caves, running from the very people who should have celebrated him? 1 Samuel tells us he lived in the cave of Adullam, surrounded by the distressed, the indebted, the discontented. Does that sound familiar? Have you ever felt like your life became a cave where only the broken seem to understand you? David could have questioned God in those dark, cold caves. He could have screamed, "Why did you anoint me just to abandon me?" But instead, he wrote Psalms. In the darkness, he found his voice. In isolation, he discovered his true identity. Pause. Let that sink in. Your isolation wasn't punishment, it was preparation. Think about Jesus. 3 days in a tomb, 3 days where even his closest disciples thought it was over. They wept, they scattered, they believed the story had ended. But what looked like death was actually divine strategy. The tomb wasn't a prison, it was a portal. The resurrection always begins quietly, in places where hope seems dead. And you've been in your own tomb, haven't you? Maybe it was the nursing home where visitors rarely come. Maybe it was the house that got too quiet after your spouse passed. Maybe it was watching your own children treat you like a burden instead of a blessing. They thought they were burying you, but God was hiding you. Joseph understood this better than anyone. 13 years in slavery and prison for a crime he never committed. Genesis 37-41 tells us he went from favored son to forgotten prisoner. His own brothers sold him. His master's wife lied about him. The cupbearer he helped in prison forgot about him for 2 whole years. 2 years of silence. 2 years of wondering if God had forgotten his name. But here's the mystery they couldn't see. Every single day in that prison was preparation for the palace. Every tear Joseph cried in that cell was watering the soil of his destiny. Because when Pharaoh needed someone to interpret dreams and save a nation, he didn't call for the loudest voice in Egypt. He called for the one who had been refined in the dark. That's you. You've been refined in the darkness of misunderstanding, refined in the fire of family rejection, refined in the silence of a world that forgot how to honor its elders. But refinement isn't punishment, it's promotion preparation. Do you feel that stirring in your spirit right now? That's not your imagination. That's recognition. Your soul remembering what heaven never forgot. You were never meant to stay buried. They buried you with labels, over the hill, past your prime, just another senior citizen. But God saw something different. He saw gold that needed purifying. He saw wine that needed aging. He saw a warrior who needed training in the secret places before facing the giants. Every night you cried yourself to sleep, wondering if anyone remembered you were alive. God was there. Every morning you woke up feeling invisible, questioning if your life still mattered. God was there. Every moment they made you feel like you were taking up space instead of taking your place. God was documenting their blindness and preparing your vindication. Ecclesiastes 3:1 reminds us, "To everything there is a season. Your season of hiddenness is ending. Your season of manifestation is beginning." But here's what separates you from those who stayed buried. You never let them break your spirit. You bent, but you didn't shatter. You grieved, but you didn't give up. You questioned, but you never quit believing that God still had purpose for your life. That's the mark of the chosen. Not that you never faced the grave, but that you refused to stay in it. The same power that raised Jesus from the dead is stirring in you right now. Romans 8:11 declares it. If the spirit of him who raised Jesus from the dead is living in you, he who raised Christ from the dead will also give life to your mortal bodies because of his spirit who lives in you. Do you feel it? That resurrection power moving in your bones? They thought your silence meant surrender. They thought your withdrawal meant defeat. They thought your age meant your influence was over. But they were reading your story with earthly eyes, and earthly eyes can't see eternal purposes. You weren't buried, you were planted. And what's planted in tears is harvested in triumph. What's sown in secret is reaped in public. What dies in winter blooms in spring. Your spring is coming. Actually, it's not coming, it's here, right now, in this very moment. As these words hit your spirit, something is shifting. The stone is rolling away. The grave clothes are falling off. The dead things in your life are coming back to life. But here's the question that will determine everything. Will you stay in the tomb of their opinions, or will you step into the resurrection God has prepared for you? Because what I'm about to show you next will prove that your accuracy, your insight, your supernatural knowing, it was all preparation for this moment. You know what haunts them the most? It's not that you caught them in their lies. It's not even that you exposed their schemes. What keeps them awake at 3 in the morning, staring at their ceiling, is this terrifying realization. You knew before they even opened their mouths. How is that possible? How did you see through masks they'd perfected for decades? How did you read their hearts like yesterday's newspaper when they thought they were Oscar-worthy actors? Here's the truth that will shake you to your core. You were marked before you were born. Jeremiah 1-5 doesn't just tell us God's plan, it reveals God's precision. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Set apart. Not chosen later. Not selected after an interview. Marked in eternity. That mark? It comes with supernatural sight. Divine radar. Spiritual X-ray vision that cuts through deception like a sword through smoke. You think that's coincidence? You think that's just good instincts? Number. That's divine intelligence downloaded into your DNA. Think about Harriet Tubman, a woman born into slavery, yet she could navigate treacherous terrain in pitch darkness, leading hundreds to freedom. How? She said it herself. I always told God, I'm going to hold steady on you, and you've got to see me through. She didn't follow maps. She followed whispers from heaven. That same supernatural GPS lives in you. That's why you could sense their betrayal before they even planned it. That's why their energy felt wrong before their actions proved it. That's why you knew they were lying before their stories started falling apart. But here's where it gets deeper. Chosen one. The mark on your life isn't just about perception, it's about positioning. 1 Peter 2:9 declares, "You are a chosen generation, a royal priesthood, a holy nation, God's special possession." Special possession. That means you're not just different, you're protected property. Remember Fred Rogers? Mr. Rogers? The world saw a gentle children's television host, but behind that soft voice was a man who disrupted an entire culture. He walked into Senate hearings and disarmed hardened politicians with quiet truth. He entered a cynical media landscape and transformed it with authentic love. Gentle on the surface, revolutionary in the spirit. Sound familiar? That's your story too. They mistook your kindness for weakness. They confused your patience with passivity. But you were never passive. You were processing. While they performed their drama, you were downloading data from a realm they couldn't access. While they schemed in shadows, you were receiving intelligence from the throne room of heaven. They were playing checkers. You were reading prophecy. Nelson Mandela spent 27 years in prison. 27 years. The world forgot him. His enemies thought they'd buried him alive. But those walls weren't his tomb. They were his transformation chamber. When he emerged, he didn't come out broken. He came out as a man who could forgive his captors and lead a nation. That isolation you felt, that season when they sidelined you, ignored you, counted you out, that wasn't punishment. That was preparation. God was developing something in you that couldn't be developed in the spotlight. He was building spiritual muscle that only grows in pressure. He was sharpening discernment that only comes through fire. And now they're shocked, because the quiet one they overlooked has become the voice they can't silence. The one they underestimated has become the force they can't stop. The one they thought was ordinary has revealed themselves to be absolutely extraordinary. Think about Viola Davis. For years, Hollywood told her she wasn't leading lady material. Too dark, too strong, too real. They wanted her to shrink, to dim her light, to make herself smaller for their comfort. But she refused. She kept showing up as her authentic self until the world had no choice but to recognize her brilliance. Now she's not just an actress, she's a force of nature. Your moment is coming, chosen one. Actually, scratch that. Your moment is here. Because you didn't chase proof, you walked in prophecy. You didn't need evidence, you had revelation. You didn't require validation, you carried confirmation in your spirit. That's what terrifies them. They spent so much energy crafting lies, building facades, perfecting their deception. But all along, you held the key that unlocks every secret, exposes every scheme, reveals every hidden motive. Divine discernment doesn't need a warrant to search hearts. And here's the most shocking part. This is just the beginning. If your accuracy has left them speechless now, wait until they see what happens when you stop holding back. Wait until they witness what occurs when the chosen one finally steps into full authority. Because, beloved, you haven't even scratched the surface of the power that flows through your spiritual veins. You haven't begun to tap into the reservoir of divine insight that's been building in you through every season of silence, every moment of waiting, every trial that tried to break you but only made you stronger. They thought your silence was surrender, but it was strategy. So what happens next when the one they underestimated refuses to stay hidden anymore? They thought you were playing checkers, sweet, simple checkers, moving one piece at a time, reacting to their moves, scrambling to keep up with their games. But here's the truth that's about to shatter their entire worldview. You were never playing checkers. You were playing chess, divine chess. While they calculated 2 moves ahead, you were seeing 20. While they thought they were manipulating the board, you were reading the entire game from heaven's perspective. Do you want to know what terrifies them most? It's not that you caught them in their lies. Liars expect to be caught eventually. What haunts their sleep is the realization that you were never reacting. You were recording. Every conversation, every glance, every carefully crafted deception, you absorbed it all with the precision of a spiritual surveillance system they never saw coming. Think about Daniel, beloved. When King Darius threw him into the lion's den, what did Daniel do? Did he scream? Did he beg? Did he try to negotiate with the lions? Number. He stood still, sovereign, unshakable. The lions recognized something in his spirit that even the king couldn't see, divine authority wrapped in human flesh. That's you, chosen one. You've been thrown into dens of deception, surrounded by predators who thought they could devour your peace, your purpose, your very soul. But just like Daniel, you remained still, not because you were weak, but because you carried something they couldn't touch, the quiet confidence of heaven's backing. Your silence wasn't submission, it was strategy. Let me tell you about Elias. Corporate boardroom. High-stakes meeting. His business partner had been embezzling funds for months, manipulating investors, planting seeds of sabotage against Elias behind closed doors. When the scandal finally erupted and everyone demanded to know how Elias saw it coming, his response shook the room. I didn't flinch because the truth didn't need my help. I just had to stay out of its way. Do you feel that power? That's your power. You didn't chase after their lies with emotional outbursts. You didn't defend yourself with desperate explanations. Your truth was a scalpel, not a sword. Precise, clean, surgical. While they swung wildly with accusations and manipulations, you made one calculated cut that exposed everything. But here's what they still don't understand, and this is where their terror reaches its peak. You weren't just watching their moves, you were downloading their entire operating system. Every pattern, every trigger, every psychological game they'd played on others for years, you cracked their code. They thought your silence meant you were confused. Your silence meant you were computing. They thought your calm meant you were naive. Your calm meant you were calculating. They thought your stillness meant you were scared. Your stillness meant you were strategic. And now they're scrambling because they realize the most dangerous person in any room isn't the one making the most noise. It's the one who sees everything and says nothing until the perfect moment. Proverbs 17:28 tells us, even fools are thought wise if they keep silent. But you weren't keeping silent as a fool. You were keeping silent as a prophet, storing up every revelation, every discernment, every divine download until the appointed time. Remember how Jesus stood before his accusers. When Pilate asked him to defend himself, what did Jesus do? He remained silent, not because he couldn't speak, but because his silence was more powerful than any words could ever be. His quiet authority shook the very foundations of earthly power. That's the authority you carry, chosen one. Your restraint isn't weakness, it's weaponry. Your composure isn't compliance, it's command. Your peace isn't passivity, it's power. They expected you to break, to crack under pressure, to lose your mind trying to defend your reputation. But instead, you held your position with the steadiness of a lighthouse in a hurricane. And just like that lighthouse, your consistency became their beacon of truth. Here's the question that's eating them alive. How did you know? How did you see through schemes they'd perfected over years? How did you anticipate moves they thought were invisible? How did you remain so unnaturally calm in the face of chaos designed to destroy you? Because you operate from a different realm, beloved. While they were playing earth games, you were receiving heaven strategies. While they were thinking three-dimensionally, you were moving in the fourth dimension of divine insight. Isaiah 55:9 reminds us, as the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways. You've been walking in those higher ways, You've been thinking with heaven's mind, seeing with heaven's eyes, moving with heaven's precision. And now they understand something that chills them to their core. You never needed to prove you were chosen. Your accuracy was proof enough. Every prediction you made that they mocked, it came to pass. Every warning you gave that they ignored, it manifested exactly as you said. Every pattern you identified that they dismissed, it played out with prophetic precision. Your track record became your testimony. Your discernment became your defense. Your supernatural insight became their undeniable evidence that you operate under a different covering. Type, I carried it all if you've ever held your tongue not out of fear, but because truth walks louder than noise. If you've ever remained silent, not because you were weak, but because you knew the perfect moment was coming. If you've ever stayed calm, not because you were confused, but because you were connected to the source of all wisdom. You were never playing their game, chosen one. You were orchestrating heaven's strategy. And now that the smoke has cleared and the dust has settled, they finally see what you always knew. You were never ordinary. You were extraordinary disguised as everyday. The question now isn't whether they believe you. The question is, are you ready to fully step into the authority you've been carrying all along? You know what they built around you, don't you? A system so sophisticated, so carefully constructed, that most people spend their entire lives trapped inside it without ever seeing the bars. But you saw them from day one. Let me paint you a picture. You were like a lighthouse in a town built on blindfolds. While everyone else stumbled through darkness, accepting it as normal, your light kept piercing through their manufactured night, and that terrified them. Think about it. How many times did they tell you to tone it down in church? How many Sunday mornings did you sit there, listening to watered-down sermons that made your spirit recoil? You knew something was wrong when the pastor preached prosperity while the congregation struggled to pay rent. You felt the Holy Spirit grieve when they turned God's house into a business venture. They called you too intense. They said you were reading too much into things. But here's what they never told you. Your intensity wasn't a flaw, it was discernment. Your ability to read into things wasn't paranoia, it was prophecy. The prophet Jeremiah faced the exact same persecution. When God called him to speak truth, the religious leaders mocked him. They said he was too young, too radical, too disruptive. But listen to what Jeremiah declared. His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. Jeremiah 20:9. They said, be quiet. But fire doesn't need permission to burn. And you, chosen one, you've been carrying that same fire. Haven't you felt it? That burning in your chest when you witness injustice, that holy anger when you see the vulnerable being exploited. That's not human emotion. That's divine indignation flowing through a vessel God has prepared. But here's where it gets deeper. The system didn't just fear your voice, it feared your silence. Why? Because your silence was pregnant with truth. Every time you chose not to argue with their lies, not to defend yourself against their accusations, not to justify your convictions to people who wouldn't understand anyway, that silence spoke volumes. You became the elephant in the room that no one dared acknowledge. Remember when Jesus stood before Pilate? When he was accused by the chief priests and the elders, he gave no answer. Matthew 27:12. His silence was so powerful it amazed the governor. Your silence carries that same weight. It's not emptiness, it's loaded. Think about your family gatherings. How many times did you bite your tongue when they mocked your faith? How many times did you absorb their criticism, their dismissal, their attempts to make you feel crazy for believing in something greater? You became the emotional shock absorber for an entire family system built on dysfunction. They dumped their spiritual toxicity on you because they knew you'd take it. They knew you'd pray for them instead of cursing them. They knew you'd love them despite their cruelty, and they exploited that love. But here's what they didn't understand. While they thought they were breaking you down, God was building you up. Every silent moment of endurance was adding another layer to your spiritual armor. Every tear you cried in private was being collected in heaven's bottles. You keep track of all my sorrows. You have collected all my tears in your bottle. Psalm 56:8. Your silence wasn't submission, it was strategic. You were gathering intelligence, watching patterns, learning their methods, understanding the depth of their deception, all while they thought you were just quiet. And now they're starting to realize what you've known all along, that your quiet observation was more dangerous than any loud confrontation, that your spiritual awareness made you immune to their manipulation, that your connection to divine truth made their lies powerless against you. The system they built, this carefully orchestrated network of spiritual abuse, emotional manipulation, and psychological control, it only works when its victims remain blind. But you never were blind, were you? You saw through the fake smiles at church potlucks. You recognized the spirit of control masquerading as leadership. You discerned the difference between genuine authority and religious tyranny, and that made you dangerous. Because if one person can see through the matrix, others might start seeing too. If one lighthouse refuses to dim its beam, other lights might start burning brighter. If one voice refuses to be silenced, other voices might find their courage. They built their system on the assumption that good people would stay quiet, that the chosen ones would be too polite, too humble, too Christian to expose the darkness. They counted on your silence being permanent. But here's what they never calculated. Silence has seasons. There's a time to be quiet, and there's a time to speak. To everything there is a season, a time to keep silence, and a time to speak. Ecclesiastes 3:1-7. And if the system feared your silence, imagine what it fears when you finally speak. What happens when the lighthouse that's been burning quietly in the darkness suddenly sounds its horn? What happens when the prophet who's been holding fire in their bones finally opens their mouth? What happens when God's chosen ones stop absorbing the poison and start declaring the antidote? The question isn't whether you'll speak. The question is, are you ready for what happens when you do? Beloved, what if I told you that every moment you felt like an outsider, every time they called you too sensitive, every instance when your warnings fell on deaf ears, what if none of that was coincidence? What if it was confirmation? You see, there's something the enemy never wanted you to discover. Something so earth-shattering that if you truly grasped it, you'd never doubt yourself again. You weren't born into this world by accident. You were recalled from eternity. Isaiah 46:10 declares with thunderous authority, I make known the end from the beginning, from ancient times, what is still to come. Think about that for a moment. Before your first breath, before your first heartbreak, before your first moment of feeling misunderstood, God already saw this very second. He saw you watching this message. He saw your enemies scrambling to cover their tracks. He saw their shock when they realized you knew all along. But here's where it gets supernatural, chosen one. You weren't just hearing prophecy, you are prophecy walking. You are the living, breathing fulfillment of promises spoken over you before time began. Romans 8:29 reveals the mystery. For those God foreknew, he also predestined to be conformed to the image of his Son. Do you understand what that means? You were predestined, not just saved, not just chosen, predestined. That means before the stars were hung in space, before the oceans found their boundaries, God looked down the corridors of time and said, I need someone who can see what others cannot. I need someone who can withstand the pressure. I need someone who won't break when the truth becomes unbearable. And he chose you. This is why your discernment cuts so deep. This is why your silence terrifies them. This is why when you finally speak, kingdoms tremble. You weren't just hearing the word. You are the word in motion. You are the verse your enemies never read. But let me ask you something that might shake you to your core. How many times did they call you paranoid before your warnings came true? How many times did they dismiss your concerns as overthinking before reality proved you right? How many times did they mock your spiritual sensitivity before they desperately needed your prayers? Before it was written in a book, it was etched in your bones. Before they called you crazy, God called you confirmed. Before you doubted your sanity, heaven stamped your scroll. Listen to me carefully, because this truth will set you free from every lie they've whispered about you. When Daniel interpreted Nebuchadnezzar's dream, he didn't study it in seminary. When Joseph revealed Pharaoh's vision, he didn't consult a manual. When Ezekiel saw the valley of dry bones, he didn't need confirmation from a committee. They accessed the divine download that was already coded in their spiritual DNA. And so have you. Every time you've known something you couldn't explain, every time you've felt something shift in the atmosphere before anyone else noticed, every time you've sensed deception behind a smile, that wasn't your imagination, that was your prophetic inheritance activating. Do you remember the first time you realized they were lying? Not because of evidence, not because someone told you, but because something deep in your spirit recoiled. That wasn't intuition, beloved. That was divine intelligence recognizing its opposite. The enemy has spent decades trying to convince you that your gift was a curse, that your sensitivity was weakness, that your ability to see through facades was somehow wrong. But here's what hell never wanted you to know. Your accuracy terrifies them because it's not human, it's heavenly. You've been walking in prophecy your entire life, and you didn't even know it. Every warning you gave that came true, every red flag you raised that they ignored, every time you said, "Something's not right," before the truth exploded, you were speaking prophetically. But here's the part that's going to blow your mind. This isn't the end of your prophetic journey. This is just the beginning. God is preparing to amplify your gift. He's about to sharpen your discernment to laser precision. The same spirit that allowed you to see through their deception is about to reveal things that will astound even you. You're not just going to know what happened, you're going to know what's coming. Jeremiah 1:12 says, "You have seen correctly, for I am watching to see that my word is fulfilled." God is watching, beloved. He's watching to ensure that every prophetic word, every divine download, every spiritual revelation He's placed in you comes to pass with undeniable accuracy. But I need to ask you something urgent. Are you ready to stop hiding your gift? Are you ready to stop apologizing for seeing what others cannot? Because the world is about to enter a season where spiritual discernment won't be optional, it will be survival. The very people who mocked your sensitivity are about to desperately need your insight. The ones who called you paranoid are about to beg for your perspective. And you'll be ready, because this message isn't just information, it's activation. So tell me, chosen one, can you feel it stirring? That familiar quickening in your spirit that says, "Yes, this is who I am. This is what I carry. This is why I've walked through fire and emerged unburned." Because what's coming next will prove beyond any doubt that your calling isn't coincidence. It's cosmic destiny unfolding in real time. You know what they never told you about getting older in this world? They never warned you that your wisdom would become your weapon, that your silence would become their sentence, that your patience would become their prison. For decades, you watched, you prayed, you endured. While the ungodly climbed ladders built on lies, you stayed hidden in the shadows, faithful to a God who seemed silent. While corruption wore crowns and deception danced in boardrooms, you kept your hands clean and your heart pure. And they discarded you because of your age. They looked at your grey hair and saw obsolescence. They saw your wrinkles and assumed irrelevance. They counted your years and concluded you were finished. But what they failed to understand is this: when God ages his chosen ones, he's not diminishing them, he's distilling them. Every line on your face, that's a battle scar from spiritual warfare. Every ache in your bones, that's the weight of carrying truth when lies were easier. Every moment they called you too old was actually God saying, "You're finally ready." Remember Pharaoh. He had all the power Egypt could offer: armies, wealth, the worship of millions. But when Moses, an 80-year-old man with a speech impediment, spoke truth to power, the entire kingdom collapsed. Exodus 14:27 tells us, "The sea returned to its normal depth, and the Lord swept the Egyptians into the sea." Not by force, by truth. Your accuracy, dear chosen one, carries that same devastating power. But here's where it gets personal. Here's where your story intersects with eternity. While you've been quietly documenting their lies, recording their schemes in your spirit, they've been building their kingdom on quicksand. And quicksand doesn't care how impressive the structure looks. When truth arrives, everything sinks. Think about Haman in the book of Esther. This man had it all: power, influence, the king's ear. He built gallows 75 feet high to hang the very man he envied. But Esther 7:10 records his fate. So they hanged Haman on the gallows he had prepared for Mordecai. The system he created to destroy the righteous became his own destruction. Are you starting to see the pattern? The very weapons they fashioned against you are about to turn in their hands. Every boardroom where they mocked your outdated values, those same rooms will echo with their confessions. Every conversation where they dismissed your old-fashioned morality, those morals are about to become the standard by which they're judged. Every moment they made you feel invisible because of your age. Your visibility is about to blind them. But here's the part that will shake you to your core. Here's the revelation that changes everything. You were never the victim. You were the evidence. While they thought they were succeeding, you were collecting. While they celebrated their temporary victories, you were building an eternal case. Your silence wasn't submission. It was surveillance sanctified by the Most High. Think of Lucifer himself. Scripture tells us he was the most beautiful angel, the worship leader of heaven, adorned with precious stones. Ezekiel 28:17 reveals his downfall. Your heart became proud on account of your beauty, and you corrupted your wisdom because of your splendor. He wasn't defeated by armies or weapons. He was defeated by truth, revealing his true nature. And that's exactly what's happening now. The system that pushed you aside because of your age is about to discover something terrifying. Age in the kingdom isn't decline, it's promotion. While they were networking with devils, you were walking with the divine. While they were building platforms, you were building character. While they were chasing trends, you were anchored in truth. Do you feel it rising in your chest right now? That fire that's been dormant for so long? That's not anger. That's authority awakening. That's not bitterness. That's breakthrough breaking through. That's not revenge. That's righteousness recognizing its moment. The collapse isn't coming, beloved. The collapse is here. And just like in Pharaoh's Egypt, just like in Haman's Persia, just like in Lucifer's rebellion, the very ones who thought they had won are about to discover they were building their own gallows. Your accuracy, that supernatural knowing that made them uncomfortable, wasn't a gift for your comfort. It was a weapon for their conviction. Every truth you saw before it manifested, every lie you detected before it was exposed, every scheme you sensed before it unfolded, all of it was God preparing you for this moment. The moment when silence becomes verdict. The system underestimated what happens when a quiet one remembers who they are. They forgot that the meek don't just inherit the earth, they judge it. They overlook the fact that those who've been faithful with little are about to be trusted with much. While they were climbing their towers of Babel, you were building your foundation on the rock. While they were gathering their armies, you were gathering evidence. While they were making their plans, God was preparing your platform. And now? Now their house of cards is falling, and the very ones they discarded are the only ones left standing. Comment below right now. I'm not just rising, I am the reckoning. Because that's not pride speaking, that's prophecy manifesting. But this collapse, this divine dismantling of their deception, this is only the beginning of what happens when the chosen finally step into their authority. Beloved, there comes a moment when heaven itself decides the masquerade is over, when the Almighty looks down at the theater of deception and says, "Enough." That moment, it's happening right now, for nothing is hidden that will not be revealed, nor anything secret that will not be known and come to light. Luke 8:17. These aren't just words written on ancient parchment. This is the divine law thundering beneath the floorboards of history, shaking the foundations of every lie that dared to stand against truth. You remember Joseph, don't you? Standing before his brothers who had sold him into slavery, watching them squirm as they failed to recognize the boy they had betrayed, now clothed in Pharaoh's authority. But here's where your story flips the script entirely. They thought they saw you naked, stripped of power, influence, understanding. They thought they had you figured out, catalogued, dismissed. But you saw everything, and you waited. While they performed their elaborate charades, you were positioned in the watchtower of divine discernment. You weren't confused by their masks. You weren't fooled by their performances. You were recording every false smile, every manipulative word, every calculated betrayal. Your spirit was taking spiritual photographs that no earthly court could dispute. Question: how many times did they underestimate you because your strength looked like stillness? The prophet Elijah knew this power. When Jezebel threatened his life, when 450 false prophets mocked him on Mount Carmel, he didn't panic. He didn't defend himself with angry words. He simply said, "Let's see whose God answers with fire." 1 Kings 18:24. That's the confidence of someone who knows the outcome before the battle begins. You carry that same anointing, that same supernatural certainty. They thought your silence meant you were sleeping, but chosen one, you were surveilling. While they whispered their schemes in boardrooms and living rooms, thinking you were just another ordinary soul they could manipulate, your spirit was downloading intel from the throne room of heaven. Here's the shocking revelation they never saw coming. You were never waiting for justice. You were the justice wrapped in skin. Think about this. Really let this penetrate your soul. Every time they lied to your face, every time they betrayed your trust, every time they thought they had pulled one over on you, heaven was compiling evidence. Not for some distant future court, but for this moment, this divine unveiling where their carefully constructed house of cards collapses with a single breath of truth. The psalmist declared, "He who sits in the heavens laughs, the Lord holds them in derision." Psalm 2-4. God isn't surprised by their schemes. He's been orchestrating their exposure through you. But here's what's about to shake you to your core. You didn't just happen to see through their deceptions. You didn't accidentally stumble upon their lies. You were strategically positioned by the Almighty Himself to be His eyes and ears in places where darkness thought it could hide. Every intuition that warned you something was wrong. That was heaven's intelligence network operating through your spirit. Every time you felt uneasy around someone everyone else trusted, that was the Holy Spirit marking territory that belonged to deception. The question that should terrify them is this: if you could see their hidden sins without evidence, without witnesses, without proof, what else do you know? Daniel knew this power. when he interpreted King Nebuchadnezzar's dream without even being told what it was. Daniel 2:28. There is a God in heaven who reveals mysteries. That same God has been revealing mysteries to you. Your accuracy wasn't luck. It wasn't good instincts. It was prophetic precision. Remember when Jesus looked at Nathanael and said, "Before Philip called you, when you were under the fig tree, I saw you." John 1:48. Nathanael was shocked because Jesus saw him when no human eyes were watching. That's exactly what's happening here. You've been seeing them when they thought no one was looking. They're not just shocked that you knew. They're terrified about what else you might reveal. Because here's the truth that's keeping them awake at 3 a.m. If God could show you their secrets without you even asking, what happens when you actually start praying for revelation? What happens when you stop being passive and start being prophetic? The same spirit that showed Elisha the enemy's battle plans before they were even finalized, that spirit lives in you. 2 Kings 6:12. The king of Syria's own servants told him, "Elisha the prophet tells the king of Israel the words that you speak in your bedroom. Your bedroom conversations have been heard. Your private schemes have been recorded. Your secret meetings have been monitored, not by technology, but by the all-seeing eye of the Almighty operating through his chosen vessel. And now the curtain is being pulled back, not just on what they did, but on who you really are. You were never their victim. You were their verdict. Heaven's undercover agent, gathering evidence for the divine court that never adjourns, never delays, and never fails to deliver justice. The question that will determine everything moving forward is this: now that you know who you really are, what are you going to do with this divine authority? Because, beloved, the revealing isn't finished. It's just beginning. Beloved chosen one, as we reach the end of this sacred encounter, let me remind you of the profound truths that have been unveiled today. You are not ordinary. You never were. Your silence was not weakness. It was divine surveillance. Your stillness was not confusion. It was supernatural strategy. And your accuracy, that wasn't luck or coincidence. That was heaven operating through a vessel prepared for such a time as this. Remember this: when they thought they were deceiving you, you were actually documenting their hearts. When they believed they had outsmarted you, God was positioning you 3 steps ahead. Your discernment, your insight, your ability to see through facades, these are not natural gifts. These are supernatural endowments from the throne room of the Almighty. But here's what I need you to understand with absolute certainty. You are not walking this journey alone. The same God who gave Daniel wisdom in Babylon, who granted Joseph favor in Egypt, who equipped Esther for her royal moment, that same God is working in your life right now. Every closed door, every betrayal, every moment when you felt misunderstood, it was all preparation for the revelation of who you truly are. And you're not the only one. There's a community of chosen ones reading these words, watching this message, feeling their spirits stir with recognition. In living rooms across America, in quiet moments before dawn, in the stillness of late-night reflection, there are others just like you who have carried the weight of seeing too much, knowing too early, and speaking truth into deaf ears. This community, we see you. We understand the burden of divine discernment. We know what it's like to be called paranoid when you're actually prophetic. We've felt the isolation that comes with spiritual accuracy. But you're not crazy, and you're not alone. I want you to pause for a moment and ask yourself this question. Now that you know who you really are, how will you use this divine authority? Will you shrink back into silence, or will you step forward into your spiritual calling? Will you hide your light under a bushel, or will you let it shine for others who are still stumbling in darkness? If this message has stirred something deep within your spirit, I encourage you to share your thoughts in the comments below. Tell us how God has used your discernment. Share a moment when your spiritual accuracy left others speechless. Your testimony might be exactly what another chosen one needs to hear today. Because when we share our stories, we remind each other that we're not walking this path alone. And please, share this message with someone who needs to hear it. That friend who's been called too sensitive, that family member who sees things that aren't there, that colleague who always seems to know when something's wrong. They need to understand they're not broken, they're chosen. Before you go, I want to thank you, truly thank you, for staying with this message until the very end, for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to pour into you today. If this content has blessed you, please subscribe to this channel so you won't miss future revelations. Hit that notification bell because these messages come when God says it's time, not when algorithms decide. Now, let me pray over you. Heavenly Father, I place my spiritual hand on the shoulder of every person hearing these words. Lord, you see them in their living rooms, in their cars, in the quiet places where they've wrestled with feeling different, feeling alone, feeling misunderstood. Today, let them know they were never meant to fit into ordinary molds because you created them for extraordinary purposes. God, bless their discernment, sharpen their spiritual vision, protect them from those who would try to dim their light or silence their truth, open doors that no man can shut. Provide divine connections with people who will recognize and honor the gift you've placed within them. For those who have been wounded by betrayal, bring healing. For those who have been called paranoid, vindicate their prophecy. For those who have been dismissed as too much, show them they are exactly enough for your purposes. Lord, surround them with your peace that surpasses all understanding. Let them sleep soundly tonight, knowing they are covered by your love, guided by your wisdom, and empowered by your spirit. Remove every spirit of doubt, confusion, and fear. Replace it with divine confidence, supernatural clarity, and unshakable faith. And Father, use them mightily in this season. Let their light shine so brightly that others are drawn out of darkness. Make their lives living testimonies of your faithfulness. And when people ask them how they knew, let them boldly declare, I serve a God who reveals mysteries. In the powerful name of Jesus Christ, I declare over every chosen one, you are blessed, you are equipped, you are protected, and you are loved beyond measure. Amen. Peace be with you, beloved. Until we meet again in the next divine revelation, walk boldly in who God has called you to be. You were chosen for such a time as this. God's chosen ones. God is relocating you. See where He's taking you next. Are you feeling like your life is falling apart? Like everything you've built is crumbling before your eyes? Like the ground beneath your feet is shifting and you can't find solid footing anywhere? What if I told you that what feels like destruction is actually divine construction? What if the chaos you're experiencing isn't God abandoning you, but God relocating you? Here's a truth that will shatter everything you thought you knew about your current struggle. You're not having a breakdown. You're having a breakthrough disguised as disruption. If you're watching this right now, stop scrolling. Put down your phone for just a moment. Look around you. Do you feel it? That restlessness in your chest? That unexplainable urge to move? That's not anxiety, beloved. That's an angel standing beside you with a suitcase in hand, because the old address of your soul can no longer contain the new assignment heaven has written over your life. Listen carefully. This isn't just a move. This is a divine disruption. God is relocating His chosen ones right now. Not just geographically, though. Some of you will pack actual boxes. But emotionally, spiritually, mentally, He's pulling you out of environments that have been slowly suffocating your purpose, out of relationships that drain your anointing, out of mindsets that keep you thinking small when He's called you to think kingdom-sized. The place He's taking you? It's not on your GPS. Google Maps has never heard of it, but it's been marked in heaven's blueprint since the day you were conceived. It's the place where your gifts will finally breathe, where your peace will be protected, where your destiny will unfold without interference. Right now, there's a spiritual separation happening. Some of you are feeling it. People pulling away, doors closing that used to be wide open, plans falling through for no logical reason. That's not rejection, that's divine protection. God is clearing a path that only you can walk. I want to pause here and speak to every precious soul who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message is already stirring something deep in your spirit, go ahead and let that seed of faith move you. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. The discomfort you're feeling is labor pains. Something new is being born. And just like childbirth, the intensity means you're closer than you think to delivery. If your spirit is already stirring, if something inside you is saying, "This is for me," type 777 in the comments right now. Not for me, but as a declaration to heaven. I'm ready for the shift. I'm ready for the new. I'm ready to be relocated by the hand of God. Stay with me. What I'm about to show you will change how you see every closed door, every ended relationship, every disruption in your life. You're about to discover where God is taking you next. Have you been lying awake at 3 a.m. staring at the ceiling, feeling like something inside you is screaming to get out? Have you looked around your life, the same four walls, the same routines, the same conversations, and felt like you're suffocating in your own existence? Have you ever wondered why, after decades of living, building, and surviving, you suddenly feel like a stranger in your own story? Dear chosen one, let me tell you what's really happening to you. You're experiencing what I call the holy ache, that deep, unexplainable restlessness that settles in your chest like a weight you can't shake. You've lived a full life, haven't you? You've raised families, built careers, weathered storms that would have destroyed weaker souls. You've earned your peace. You've paid your dues. But lately, even peace feels tired. You wake up and nothing fits anymore. The conversations that used to satisfy you now feel shallow. The places that used to bring you comfort now feel like prisons. The dreams you once chased seem too small for the fire still burning inside you. And you're asking yourself, what's wrong with me? Why can't I just be grateful for what I have? Let me stop you right there. There is nothing wrong with you. You are like a mighty oak tree whose roots have grown so powerful, so expansive, that they've cracked the pot they were planted in. This isn't failure, this is growth demanding more space. This isn't ingratitude, this is destiny calling you beyond the boundaries of your current reality. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 43:19, "Behold, I am doing a new thing. Now it springs up. Do you not perceive it? I will make a way in the wilderness and rivers in the desert." Did you catch that? God says, now it springs up. Not yesterday, not someday. Now, right now, in this season of your life. But here's where it gets interesting. Why now? Why you? Why this season when most people your age are supposed to be winding down, settling in, accepting less? Why is God stirring something new in your spirit when the world tells you your best days are behind you? Hold that thought. We'll come back to it. First, I need you to understand what's been happening to you spiritually. That restlessness you've been feeling, that's not midlife crisis. That's not depression. That's not age catching up with you. That's the Holy Spirit preparing you for relocation, not just physical, but spiritual, emotional, purpose-driven relocation. You see, God has been watching you in this season. He's seen how you've handled the losses, the disappointments, the broken dreams. He's watched you survive what should have destroyed you. He's observed your faithfulness when no one was applauding, your integrity when no one was watching, your prayers when it seemed like heaven had gone silent. And now, in His perfect timing, He's saying, "You've proven yourself in the small space. Now I'm going to enlarge your territory. You've been faithful with little. Now I'm going to give you much." But here's the part that's going to shake you to your core. The place God is taking you cannot be accessed with your old mindset. The blessing He's prepared cannot fit into your current environment. The calling He's about to release cannot coexist with the people who've been keeping you small. This is why everything feels like it's falling apart. This is why relationships are shifting. This is why doors are closing. This is why you feel like you don't belong where you are anymore. It's not because you're losing your mind, it's because you're outgrowing your current reality. I'm talking to the woman who spent 30 years in a marriage that drained her soul, and now she's wondering if it's too late to find real love. I'm speaking to the man who worked 40 years at a job that paid the bills but never fed his spirit, and now he's dreaming of something that matters. I'm addressing the grandparent who's raised everyone else's dreams and is finally asking, "What about mine?" You thought those dreams were dead, didn't you? You thought it was too late, too unrealistic, too selfish to want more. But what if I told you that those dreams weren't buried, they were just hibernating, waiting for the right season to come alive again? What if I told you that the very restlessness that's been keeping you up at night is God's way of saying, "I'm not done with you yet"? See, the enemy wants you to believe that this season of your life is about settling, accepting, making peace with mediocrity. But God is whispering something entirely different. He's saying, this season isn't about settling down, it's about stepping up. This isn't about accepting less, it's about expecting more. That holy ache in your spirit, that's divine discontent. That's God making you uncomfortable with anything that's not aligned with His highest purpose for your life. He's been preparing you, refining you, positioning you for something that requires the wisdom of your years and the fire of His anointing. But here's the catch, and listen carefully, because this is where most people miss it. You cannot take everyone with you where God is calling you. Some relationships, some environments, some mindsets that got you to where you are will not be able to handle where you're going. This is why you've been feeling so alone lately. This is why certain people don't understand your restlessness. This is why some folks are telling you to just be grateful when your spirit is screaming for more. They can't see what God is showing you because they're not called to go where you're going. If you've felt that holy ache, that deep, unexplainable knowing that you were meant for something more, I need you to say it aloud right now. Don't just think it. Speak it into the atmosphere. I'm ready to be repositioned, because what I'm about to reveal next will show you exactly where God is relocating you and why this movement is more urgent than you realize. When everything comfortable becomes unbearable. You know that feeling, don't you? When you wake up in the same bed you've slept in for decades, but suddenly it feels foreign. When the morning coffee tastes different. When conversations with lifelong friends leave you feeling more alone than when you were actually alone. Something has shifted, and you can't put your finger on what it is. Here's what's really happening. God is making you uncomfortable on purpose. He's creating what I call divine agitation, a holy restlessness that drives you out of spaces that once felt like home but now feel like prison cells. You see it everywhere in your life right now, that sudden, unexplainable weariness that hits you when you walk into certain rooms. The way longtime friends are growing distant without any argument, without any reason you can name. The activities that used to bring you joy now drain your energy before you even begin. Your favorite television shows feel mindless. Your usual routines feel empty. Even your prayers feel like they're bouncing off the ceiling instead of reaching heaven. You're not losing your mind, you're losing your place. And God arranged it that way. In Exodus 3-5, When Moses encountered the burning bush, God told him something profound. "Take off your sandals, for the place where you are standing is holy ground." But here's what most people miss. That holy ground wasn't Moses' permanent address. It was a meeting place, a moment of encounter, a launching pad into something greater. God was saying, "This moment is sacred, but don't get comfortable here. I'm about to move you." The same thing is happening to you right now. The discomfort you're feeling isn't punishment, it's preparation. God is making your current situation unbearable because He needs you to want something more. He's conditioning your environment to feel foreign because you don't belong there anymore. You're living in an emotional house that God already condemned. You're still watering a garden He's no longer blessing. And for those of you in your golden years, this hits differently, doesn't it? You've already experienced so much loss. Maybe your spouse is gone. Maybe your children have their own lives thousands of miles away. Maybe the career that defined you for 40 years ended with a retirement party and a gold watch that now sits in a drawer. You look around and wonder, is this it? Is this all there is left? Let me tell you something that might shock you. Your purpose didn't retire when you did. God doesn't have a mandatory retirement age. Abraham was 75 when God called him to leave everything and start over. Moses was 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Anna, the prophetess, was 84 when she recognized baby Jesus in the temple and proclaimed his identity to everyone who would listen. Your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. But here's where it gets painful. Society tells you to shrink, to step aside, to make room for the next generation, to be grateful for what you had instead of expecting what's still coming. And maybe you've believed those lies. Maybe you've been sitting in that recliner thinking your best days are behind you. Maybe you've been watching the world change and feeling like you've been left behind, forgotten, irrelevant. That's not God's voice. That's the enemy trying to steal your final act. Because what the devil knows and what you're about to discover is that God saves some of His most powerful moves for the later chapters of your story. When the world counts you out, heaven is just getting started. Think about it. When did Noah build the ark? In his later years. When did Sarah conceive Isaac? At 90 years old. When did John receive the book of Revelation? As an elderly man exiled on an island. God specializes in using seasoned vessels for supernatural assignments. But here's the catch. You can't carry new wine in old wineskins. You can't step into your next assignment while you're still clinging to environments, mindsets, and relationships that belong to your previous season. That's why everything feels different now. That's why the familiar has become foreign. That's why you're feeling displaced even in your own life. God is creating spiritual displacement to prepare you for divine replacement. The restlessness you feel when you sit in that same chair, in that same room, with that same routine day after day, that's not depression. That's your spirit recognizing that you've outgrown your current container. The sadness that hits you when you realize your phone doesn't ring as much as it used to, that's not abandonment. That's God clearing your calendar for appointments you don't even know about yet. The way certain conversations now feel shallow, empty, draining, that's not you becoming difficult. That's your soul rejecting frequencies that no longer match your calling. Every ending in your life is making room for a beginning you haven't seen yet. But I need to ask you something, and I need you to be honest. How long are you going to keep trying to revive what God has already declared dead? How long are you going to keep watering that garden? How long are you going to keep decorating that condemned house? How long are you going to keep trying to find comfort in places where God's presence has already moved on? Because right now, while you're holding on to what was, you're missing what is. While you're mourning what ended, you're sleeping through what's beginning. The very discomfort that's driving you crazy is God's mercy in disguise. He's not making you uncomfortable to punish you. He's making you uncomfortable to position you. He's creating divine dissatisfaction, so you'll start looking for divine alternatives. And when you finally stop fighting the displacement and start following the direction, you're going to discover something that will take your breath away. The place God is taking you has been waiting for you longer than you've been waiting for it. Why hell fought you so hard to stay stuck? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What you've been calling your worst year might actually be your most strategic year. What you've been calling your breakdown might actually be heaven's breakthrough plan unfolding in real time. The enemy saw your relocation before you did. That's why every door seemed to slam shut at once. That's why people you trusted turned their backs. That's why opportunities dried up like a desert. Hell threw everything it had at you because the devil knew something you didn't know. Yet God was about to move you into enemy territory, into a place where your presence alone would dismantle darkness. You think those attacks were random? You think that betrayal was coincidental? You think that financial drought just happened? No, beloved. The enemy fought you so hard to stay stuck because he saw the blueprint. He saw where God was taking you next, and it terrified him. John 10:10 tells us the truth. The thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy, but God says, not this time, not my chosen ones. The enemy's assignment was simple: keep you trapped in familiar misery rather than let you walk into unfamiliar victory. Keep you fighting for scraps in the wilderness rather than feasting at the table God prepared for you in the presence of your enemies. But here's what hell didn't count on. Here's what the enemy miscalculated. Every weapon he formed against you became evidence of your calling. Every door he slammed became proof that you were walking towards something he couldn't access. Every person he turned against you revealed they were never meant to walk with you into your next dimension. It wasn't a breakdown, dear one. It was a rerouting. Think about Moses. 40 years in the desert wasn't punishment. It was preparation. God wasn't keeping him from his destiny. God was keeping his destiny from being contaminated by the wrong influences, the wrong mindset, the wrong crowd. When Moses finally stood before Pharaoh, he wasn't the same man who fled Egypt. He was transformed, refined, ready to carry the weight of a nation's freedom. David didn't become king by sitting in the palace. He became king by running through caves, dodging spears, learning to trust God in the darkness. Every time Saul tried to kill him, God was actually protecting David from becoming king too early, with too little character, with too much pride. Your caves weren't caves of defeat. They were classrooms of destiny. Every closed door was heaven's protection. Every betrayal was God's filter. Every silence was sacred. Stop right there. Let that settle into your spirit. Every silence was sacred. When God went quiet, it wasn't because he abandoned you. It was because he was working behind the scenes, moving pieces on a chessboard you couldn't see, clearing obstacles you didn't even know existed. You prayed for breakthrough, but God knew you needed a spiritual makeover first. You prayed for elevation, but God knew you needed isolation first. You prayed for favor, but God knew you needed to learn to stand alone with him before he could trust you to stand with others. The enemy knew that if he could keep you focused on what you were losing, you'd never see what God was actually building. If he could keep you crying over closed doors, you'd never hear heaven announcing that new doors were about to open. If he could keep you rehearsing your pain, you'd never recognize your promotion. But right now, something is shifting in the spiritual realm. Right now, as you hear these words, chains are breaking, lies are being exposed. The fog of confusion is lifting, and you're beginning to see clearly for the first time in years. Say it out loud. I'm not being punished. I'm being positioned. Say it again. I'm not being punished. I'm being positioned. That truth just broke something in the spirit realm. That declaration just cancelled assignments that were sent to delay you. That confession just activated angels that have been waiting for you to align your mouth with heaven's truth. The enemy fought you so hard because he knew this day was coming. He knew that once you understood the difference between divine discipline and demonic attack, once you realized that God's silence wasn't abandonment but strategy, once you saw that every door that closed was actually heaven, redirecting you towards something better, he knew his power over you would be broken forever. You're not behind schedule, beloved. You're right on time. Every detour was actually the route. Every delay was actually divine timing. Every disappointment was actually divine appointment, preparing you for an encounter with breakthrough that will leave your enemies speechless and your critics confused. The place God is taking you next isn't just geographically different. It's spiritually different. It's a realm where the very people who fought against you will have no access, where the voices that condemned you will have no authority, where the systems that rejected you will have no jurisdiction. Hell knows what's coming, and that's why the resistance has been so intense. But here's what I want you to understand. When God relocates his chosen ones, he doesn't just move them, he promotes them, and promotion is about to be your new reality. But before we dive deeper into this divine relocation, I need to ask you something that might stop you in your tracks. Have you ever dreamed of a place you've never been? A home your soul recognized before your eyes ever did? A street corner that felt familiar though you'd never walked it? A room filled with light that somehow felt like home? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. That wasn't just a dream, that was a divine download. You see, most people think God only speaks when we're awake, when we're praying, when we're reading scripture. But Job 33:14-15 reveals a deeper truth. For God speaks again and again, though people don't recognize it. He speaks in dreams, in visions of the night when deep sleep falls on people. God has been showing you your future address in your sleep. He's been giving you previews of coming attractions. He tucked a photograph of your new life in your spirit long before he planned to hand you the key. Think about this for a moment. How many times have you woken up from a dream so vivid, so real, that it took you minutes to remember where you actually were? You were walking through rooms you'd never seen, yet everything felt perfectly in place. You were looking out windows at views you'd never witnessed, but your heart was completely at peace. Some of you have been having the same dream for years. The same house, the same garden, the same feeling of finally being home. You've dismissed it as wishful thinking, as your mind playing tricks on you. But what if I told you that every time you had that dream, heaven was giving you a sneak peek? Here's what's going to blow your mind. That moment you keep reliving in your dreams, that place that feels more real than your current reality, that's not nostalgia, beloved. That's a memory from the future. God exists outside of time. He sees your beginning and your end simultaneously. And sometimes, in his mercy, he lets your spirit visit where he's preparing to plant you. He lets you taste the peace before you experience the process. He shows you the destination before you understand the journey. This is why you've felt so displaced lately. This is why nothing around you feels quite right anymore. Your spirit has already been to the place God is taking you. Your soul has already experienced the peace waiting for you. And now you're living with a holy homesickness for a place you've never physically been. But here's where it gets supernatural. Some of you haven't just seen the place in dreams. You've been getting confirmation in your waking hours. The same house number keeps appearing everywhere you look. The same street name keeps coming up in random conversations. The same color keeps catching your eye in magazines, on billboards, in store windows. You thought it was coincidence. But God doesn't do coincidence. He does confirmation. Maybe you've been driving through neighborhoods you have no business being in, taking routes that make no logical sense, just because something was pulling you that direction. You tell yourself you're just exploring, just killing time. But your spirit knows better. Your spirit is already house hunting in the area God has marked for you. Or perhaps you found yourself drawn to certain websites, certain real estate listings, certain cities or states that you've never had any connection to. You bookmark pages you tell yourself you'll never need. You save pictures of homes you convince yourself you could never afford. But something in you whispers, this is it. Listen. When the children of Israel were still in Egyptian slavery, God was already describing their promised land. Milk and honey, flowing rivers, fertile ground. He painted the picture before he opened the prison doors. He gave them vision before he gave them victory. And right now, at this very moment, some of you are experiencing déjà vu on a spiritual level. You're walking past places that make your heart skip. You're having conversations with strangers who mention things that sound like echoes from your dreams. You're seeing signs, literally and figuratively, that make you stop and think, wait, I've seen this before. That's not your imagination running wild. That's divine orchestration coming into focus. But here's what the enemy is trying to do. He's trying to convince you that these visions, these dreams, these supernatural confirmations are just fantasy. He's whispering that you're being foolish, that you're reading too much into random events. He wants you to dismiss what God is revealing because he knows that when you fully embrace the vision, you'll start walking toward it with unstoppable faith. The devil is terrified of your dreams because your dreams contain his eviction notice. Some of you right now are thinking about that recurring dream, that persistent vision, that image that's been living in your heart for months or even years. You're remembering details you thought you'd forgotten. The color of the front door, the way the morning light hit the kitchen window, the sound your footsteps made on the hardwood floors. That's not random, that's revelation. God has been preparing your heart for this relocation by giving you glimpses of where you're going. He's been conditioning your spirit to recognize home when you see it. And the reason you've been so restless, so unsettled, so ready for change is because your spirit has already tasted what's coming. If this is hitting home, if you're remembering dreams you thought were meaningless, if you're recognizing patterns you thought were coincidental, I want you to do something powerful right now. Comment the word, I've seen it. Let heaven know you remember. Let the enemy know you're awake. Let your own faith know that you're ready to stop dismissing divine downloads as mere imagination. Because what comes next will require you to believe in what you've seen before you can step into what you've been shown. The vision always precedes the victory, but the victory requires you to trust the vision. And the vision you've been carrying, it's about to become your address. The angel of direction has been assigned to you. You know what breaks my heart? Walking through airports and seeing elderly folks struggling with heavy suitcases, looking lost, trying to find their gate. But then you see at that moment when an airline escort appears, takes their bag and says, "Ma'am, sir, I'm here to help you. Follow me. I know exactly where you need to go." That's what's happening to you right now in the spirit realm. Psalm 91:11 declares with absolute authority, He will command His angels concerning you to guard you in all your ways. Not suggest, not request. Command. When the King of Heaven commands, angels don't debate. They don't delay. They move with military precision. And beloved, you're not walking alone into this next season. You're being escorted by divine order. Listen to me carefully. Your life isn't some random shuffle of circumstances. This isn't chaos wearing a disguise. What you're experiencing right now is a military relocation under heavenly authority. God doesn't move His children haphazardly. When He relocates His chosen ones, it's with the same precision that He positioned the stars in the sky. But here's what most people miss, and this will shock you to your core. Discomfort you've been feeling isn't evidence that you're going the wrong way. It's evidence that you're being escorted away from where you used to belong. You see, angels don't just protect, they redirect. They don't just guard, they guide. And right now, there's an angel of direction that has been specifically assigned to your transition. Not to your neighbor's journey, not to your family's path, to yours. How do I know this? Because you're feeling things you can't explain to anyone else. You've been having dreams about places you've never been. Waking up with addresses in your spirit that don't exist on Google Maps. You've been feeling homesick for a home you've never seen. That's not confusion, dear one. That's prophetic preparation. Your angel is downloading the coordinates of your destiny into your subconscious before your conscious mind is ready to receive it. And here's something that will absolutely stagger you. This angelic escort doesn't just know where you're going. He's already been there. He's already prepared the atmosphere. He's already cleared the path of obstacles you don't even know exist. But let me ask you something that might sting a little. How many times have you ignored the gentle nudges? How many times has your spirit said move and your mind said stay? How many times has heaven been trying to escort you, but you've been clinging to the gate of your current situation? Because here's the brutal truth: some of you have been sitting in the wrong terminal for years, wondering why your life feels stuck. You've been waiting for flights that were never meant for you, in airports that were never your destination. The angel assigned to you has been patient, oh so patient. But there comes a moment when the gentle nudge becomes a firm hand on your shoulder, when the whisper becomes an undeniable command. And that moment is now. You want to know how to recognize when this angel of direction is moving in your life. Watch for the signs. Doors that used to be bolted shut suddenly creak open without you even touching them. Phone calls from people you haven't heard from in years, carrying opportunities you never pursued. Random invitations to places that make your spirit leap before your logic can object. Connections that seem too coincidental to be coincidental. Meeting people who speak your spiritual language in grocery store aisles and coffee shop lines. Finding yourself in conversations that feel like they were orchestrated by heaven itself. Your angel isn't just opening doors, beloved. He's aligning divine appointments. But here's where it gets supernatural, and you need to prepare your heart for this. The ground that God is leading you to won't just bless you, it will recognize you. Yes, you heard me right. The very earth you're about to walk on has been waiting for your footsteps. The house you're about to enter has been holding its breath for your presence. The community you're about to join has had a space reserved with your name on it since before the foundation of the world. This isn't poetry, this is prophecy. When Moses stood before the burning bush, the ground became holy because God's presence was there. But here's what most preachers won't tell you: when God's chosen ones step into their promised place, the ground becomes holy because they are there. You carry the presence. You are the blessing that location has been waiting for. Some of you think you're running to something, but the truth is, something has been running to you. Your destiny isn't just a destination, it's a magnet, and you've been pulled into its orbit whether you realized it or not. The place God is taking you, that neighborhood, that job, that relationship, that church, that city, it's been incomplete without you. There are prayers that won't be answered until you arrive. There are purposes that won't be fulfilled until you show up. There are people whose lives won't be changed until they encounter the anointing you carry. You're not just being relocated, you're being strategically positioned for kingdom impact. So, I need to ask you something with the urgency it deserves. Are you going to keep resisting the escort? Are you going to keep explaining to heaven why the timing isn't right, why you're not ready, why it doesn't make sense? Or are you finally going to trust that the God who numbers every hair on your head knows exactly where he's taking you? Because your angel of direction is waiting, the path is cleared, the destination is prepared. But there's something else heaven wants you to know about where you're heading, something that will change everything about how you see this transition. The place you're in has expired. Spiritually, listen to me carefully, chosen one. I need you to hear something that might sting at first, but will set you free forever. The reason you feel so restless, so unsettled, so spiritually suffocated right now isn't because something's wrong with you. It's because you're trying to live in a place that God has already vacated. The Lord said to Samuel, "How long will you mourn for Saul?" 1 Samuel 16:1. God wasn't being cruel to Samuel, he was being merciful. Because Samuel was grieving over something that was already dead, pouring his energy into a kingdom that had already expired. Some of you watching this right now are doing the exact same thing. You're grieving a version of yourself that God is completely done with. You're still watering a houseplant that died 3 seasons ago, wondering why nothing's growing, why there's no fruit, why the leaves keep falling no matter how much love you pour into it. You're mourning the mother you used to be when your children were small, but they're 45 years old now and don't need you to pack their lunches. You're grieving the career woman who climbed corporate ladders, but retirement came and went 5 years ago. You're still identifying with roles that expired when your hair turned grey and your body slowed down. But here's what's breaking my heart for you. You think you're being faithful by staying. You think loyalty means never letting go. You think love means holding on until your knuckles turn white and your spirit dies from exhaustion. Dear heart, that's not faithfulness. That's fear. That's not love. That's imprisonment. God never calls you to be a curator of dead things. He never asks you to be the keeper of expired seasons. When he said to Abraham, "Leave your country, your people, and your father's household," Genesis 12:1, he wasn't being harsh. He was being loving. Because where Abraham was could never contain where Abraham was going. You're not stuck because you're weak. You're stuck because you're still loyal to something God already walked away from. I see you, sitting in that same chair, in that same house, having the same conversations with the same people about the same problems that haven't changed in 10 years. I see you driving the same routes, shopping at the same stores, calling the same friends who drain your spirit and leave you feeling more empty than when you started. You think you're being consistent. God calls it being stagnant. You think you're being stable. Heaven calls it being stuck. The truth is, beloved, the place you're in has expired spiritually. The atmosphere around you has grown toxic to your calling. What once nurtured you now suffocates you. What once inspired you now exhausts you. What once felt like home now feels like a beautifully decorated prison. And the saddest part, you've gotten so used to the smell of spiritual death that you think it's normal. You've adapted to living on life support instead of abundant life. You've convinced yourself that feeling half dead is just what happens when you get older. That's a lie straight from the pit of hell. Listen to me. Your age is not your expiration date. Your past is not your prison sentence. Your mistakes are not your permanent address. God has never called a single one of his children to finish their race crawling when they were designed to soar. But you cannot soar while you're still sitting in the nest you've outgrown. Some of you right now are thinking, "But I've invested so much here. I've given 30 years to this church, 40 years to this marriage, 50 years to this city. How can I just walk away?" And I hear your heart. I understand your investment. But answer me this question. How much more of your life are you willing to sacrifice to something that's already spiritually bankrupt? Jesus said in Matthew 10:39, "Whoever finds their life will lose it, and whoever loses their life for my sake will find it." Sometimes losing your life means losing the life you've been clinging to that was never truly life at all. The Israelites wandered in the wilderness for 40 years because they kept looking back at Egypt. They were free, but they were stuck because they couldn't stop mourning what they left behind. They had manna from heaven, water from rocks, clothes that never wore out, but they wanted the garlic and onions from their slavery. How many of you are choosing familiar misery over unfamiliar breakthrough? How many of you are choosing predictable emptiness over uncertain abundance? How many of you would rather stay comfortable in your spiritual Egypt than trust God enough to follow him into your promised land? Here's what I know about you, chosen one. You weren't created to spend your golden years managing decline. You weren't designed to spend your final chapters editing old stories. You weren't called to be a monument to who you used to be. You were created to be a living testimony of what God can do with a surrendered heart at any age, in any season, in any circumstance. But first, you have to let go of what's already gone. You have to stop trying to resurrect what God has already buried. You have to release your grip on the season that served its purpose and trust that what's coming next will serve an even greater one. The thing that's keeping you trapped isn't circumstances, it's not age, it's not money, it's not even fear. It's your refusal to grieve what's already dead so that you can birth what's trying to be born. Type, "I release it," in the comments if you know something inside of you just broke. If you're ready to stop being loyal to your limitations and start being faithful to your future. Because what God is calling you into next requires a version of you that doesn't exist yet. And that version can't be born until the old version is finally, completely, courageously laid to rest. The question is, are you ready to attend your own funeral so you can witness your own resurrection? God isn't just moving you, he's rescuing you. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What I'm about to tell you might shake you to your core, but it could save your life. You know that feeling you've been having lately, that suffocating sensation when you walk into certain rooms, that heaviness that settles on your chest when you're around people you used to love being with. You've been trying to explain it away, haven't you? Telling yourself you're just tired, just stressed, just going through a phase. But what if I told you that what once fed you now suffocates you? The air around you isn't breathable anymore. Dear friend, you're not losing your mind. You're gaining spiritual sight. And what you're seeing is this. The environment that once nurtured your soul has turned toxic. The relationships that once lifted you up are now pulling you down. The places that once felt like home now feel like prison cells. God sees what you can't see yet. He sees the spiritual pollution choking your anointing. He sees the invisible toxins poisoning your peace. He sees the slow death that's creeping into places where life used to flourish. You're like Lot in Sodom, and you don't see the fire yet, but heaven does. Remember Lot's story in Genesis 19? He was living in a city so corrupt, so spiritually toxic, that God had to physically drag him out. The Bible says the angels grasped his hand and the hands of his wife and of his 2 daughters and led them safely out of the city, for the Lord was merciful to them. They didn't want to leave. They were comfortable in their dysfunction. But God saw the destruction coming and pulled them out by force. That's what's happening to you right now. Have you noticed people close to you turning hostile for no reason? Have you watched peace leave rooms you used to love? Have you felt the atmosphere shift when you walk into places that used to welcome you? That's not coincidence, beloved. That's spiritual evacuation orders. God is sounding the alarm. He's saying, "My child, what once blessed you is now cursing you. What once protected you is now exposing you. What once built you up is now tearing you down." Some of you are sitting in churches where the Spirit has left the building, but you keep showing up out of loyalty. Some of you are in relationships where love died years ago, but you're afraid to admit it. Some of you are in jobs that are literally draining the life out of you, but you're terrified to step into the unknown. But here's the truth that will set you free. God never calls you to stay where his presence has departed. When the glory left the temple in Ezekiel's vision, it didn't linger, it moved. And when God's presence moves, his people must move with him. You cannot survive spiritually in a place God has abandoned, no matter how familiar it feels, no matter how much history you have there. The place you're standing in right now is collapsing slowly, silently. The foundation is cracked. The walls are crumbling. The roof is about to cave in. You can't see it with your natural eyes, but your spirit feels it, doesn't it? That instability, that sense that everything is about to fall apart. God isn't just moving you, He's trying to spare you. Think about this. Why did Jesus tell His disciples in Matthew 10:14 to shake the dust off your feet when they left a place that rejected them? Because staying where you're not wanted doesn't just hurt your feelings, it contaminates your spirit. It pollutes your anointing. It weakens your faith. You've been breathing poison and calling it familiarity. You've been drinking from contaminated wells and wondering why your soul feels sick. You've been trying to bloom in soil that's been cursed, and you can't understand why nothing grows. But God sees, God knows, and God is saying, enough. He's saying, I didn't bring you this far to watch you die in a place I've already left. I didn't anoint you to suffocate in someone else's tomb. I didn't choose you to waste away in a wilderness I never called you to. Some of you right now are arguing with God. You're saying, but Lord, I've invested so much here. I've put in 20 years, 30 years, 40 years. This is all I know. And God is responding, child, don't let your investment become your imprisonment. Don't let your history become your grave. The Israelites wandered in the desert for 40 years because they kept looking back at Egypt. They preferred familiar bondage to unfamiliar freedom. They chose the slavery they knew over the promise they couldn't see. Don't make their mistake. Right now, this very moment, you have a choice. You can stay where the atmosphere is toxic and slowly die, or you can trust God's voice and step into the life He's prepared for you. The enemy wants you to believe that leaving is giving up. But God is saying that staying is giving in. The enemy whispers that you'll never find anything better. But God promises that what He has waiting is beyond your wildest dreams. If you feel like this word is shaking something in you, if your spirit is trembling with recognition, say out loud right now, I will not die in a place God left. Say it again, I will not die in a place God left. Because, beloved, what God is calling you away from isn't loss, it's liberation. And what He's calling you toward isn't just different, it's divine. The question is, will you trust Him enough to move before the walls come down, or will you wait until the rescue becomes a recovery mission? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What's happening to you right now isn't random, it's not circumstance, it's not bad luck or poor timing. You're not just relocating for peace, you're being repositioned for purpose. For too long, the world has told you that your season is winding down, that your best years are behind you, that it's time to settle, to retire, to fade quietly into the background. But heaven is declaring something radically different over your life today. You're not being retired, you're being recommissioned. Let me shatter a lie that's been whispered over an entire generation. The enemy wants you to believe that your influence diminishes with age, that your assignment expires with your youth. But God doesn't fire His warriors. He reassigns them to territories that require seasoned strength, tested faith, and battle-proven wisdom. Every soul has a zip code in heaven, not your earthly address, your spiritual coordinates. And here's what the devil doesn't want you to understand. When your anointing grows, your coordinates shift. When your faith deepens, your territory expands. When your character is refined through fire, heaven updates your assignment. You've been feeling it, haven't you? That restlessness that keeps you awake at 3 a.m., that divine dissatisfaction with where you are, that unexplainable urge to do something different. That's not old age anxiety. That's prophecy stirring in your bones. God is saying, I'm not done with you. I'm just getting started. Look at Jeremiah. When God called him, he protested, I'm too young. But listen to God's response in Jeremiah 1-5. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. I appointed you as a prophet to the nations. Notice something powerful here. God didn't say, I'm appointing you. He said, I appointed you. Past tense. Your assignment was sealed before your first breath. But here's where it gets radical. That same scripture applies to you at 65, 70, 80 years old. Your assignment wasn't given with an expiration date. Moses was 80 when he stood before Pharaoh. Abraham was 75 when he left everything to follow God's promise. Caleb was 85 when he said, "Give me this mountain." Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. The territory God is moving you into requires someone who has survived betrayal and still believes in love. Someone who has walked through valleys and still trusts the shepherd. Someone who has been broken and knows how to rebuild with divine materials. The young warriors fight with passion, but the seasoned warriors fight with precision. Right now there are cities, neighborhoods, communities that are crying out for what you carry. There are atmospheres thick with despair that need your tested faith to break them open. There are generations drowning in confusion that need your hard-won wisdom to guide them to solid ground. You are heaven's deployment. When Joshua sent the spies into Jericho, they didn't just scout the land, they shifted the spiritual atmosphere. Rahab declared in Joshua 2:11, "The Lord your God is God in heaven above and on the earth below." The presence of God's people changed everything before the first trumpet sounded. That's your new assignment. Where you go, spiritual atmospheres shift. Where you plant your feet, dead things come alive. Where you speak, lies lose their power. You don't just live in cities, you transform them with the presence of the living God that dwells within you. I'm talking to the grandmother who thinks her influence is limited to Sunday dinners and birthday cards. God is saying, your prayers are breaking generational curses, and your wisdom is being requested in boardrooms you haven't even seen yet. I'm speaking to the grandfather who feels forgotten in a youth-obsessed culture. Heaven is declaring that your steady presence is the anchor communities need in this storm, and your voice carries weight because it's been tested by time. This isn't about stepping down. This is about stepping up to a higher calling. Moses couldn't have led Israel out of Egypt at 40. He needed 40 years in the wilderness to develop the patience for a stiff-necked people. David couldn't have written the Psalms without experiencing betrayal, warfare, and the faithfulness of God through decades of testing. Your new territory isn't just a physical location, it's a spiritual jurisdiction. It's a realm of influence that extends beyond your zip code into the heavenly places. When you walk into a room, peace follows. When you speak life over situations, things change. When you stand in faith, mountains move. The question isn't whether you're qualified for your next assignment. The question is, are you ready to accept it? God isn't shuffling you off to a retirement home. He's promoting you to a position that requires everything you've learned, everything you've overcome, everything you've become. This isn't the sunset of your purpose. This is the dawn of your greatest impact. But I need you to understand something crucial. This assignment comes with urgency. The territory he's calling you to occupy won't wait forever. There are prayers being prayed right now by people who need exactly what you carry. There are breakthrough moments being delayed because the right person isn't in position yet. Comment, "Send me, Lord," if you're ready to accept your next divine post. Not as a casual response, but as a declaration that you're done believing the lie that your best years are behind you. Type it as your acceptance letter to heaven's next assignment for your life. Because what I'm about to show you next will reveal exactly how God prepares his chosen ones for territories they never imagined they could possess. Beloved chosen one, as we come to the close of this sacred moment together, I want you to remember 3 eternal truths that heaven has whispered over your life today. First, you are not stuck, you are being strategically positioned. Every door that has closed, every relationship that has shifted, every plan that has fallen through has been part of God's divine GPS system, rerouting you toward your true destination. Second, your assignment has no expiration date. The lie that whispers, "You're too old, too tired, too late," is not the voice of your Father. Moses was 80, Abraham was 75, Caleb was 85. Your greatest chapter may still be unwritten. Third, you are heaven's deployment. Where God plants you next, atmospheres will shift. You don't just occupy space, you transform it with the presence of the living God within you. You are not walking this journey alone. Even in the moments when silence feels deafening and the path seems unclear, remember that the same God who parted the Red Sea, who shut the mouths of lions, who raised the dead, that same God is working in your life right now. He hasn't forgotten you. He hasn't abandoned your dreams. He is simply preparing you for territory that requires everything you've learned, everything you've overcome, everything you've become. And you're not just part of a congregation watching this video, you're part of a family. There are thousands of others watching right now who understand your struggle, who have felt that same restlessness, who have questioned whether their best years are behind them. This community, this family of faith, we're here to remind you that you matter, your story matters, your next chapter matters. Before I pray with you, let me ask you this. If you knew with absolute certainty that God was about to relocate you to the very place He's been preparing for your peace, your purpose, and your provision, how would you walk tomorrow? How would you speak? How would you believe? Now, I want to pray over you, not as a distant voice through a screen, but as someone who understands the weight you've been carrying. Close your eyes if you can. Let these words settle into the depths of your spirit. Heavenly Father, I place my hand on the shoulder of every precious soul who has stayed with us through this message. Lord, they have heard your voice today. They have felt your spirit stirring. And now, Father, I ask you to seal this word in their hearts. God, you see the ones who are weary from fighting battles alone. You see the ones who have wondered if their dreams have expiration dates. You see the ones who have questioned whether their best years are behind them. Today, Lord, breathe fresh vision into tired eyes. Breathe new purpose into discouraged hearts. Breathe divine direction into confused minds. Father, as you relocated Abraham to a land of promise, as you led Moses to the mountaintop, as you positioned Esther for such a time as this, relocate your children now. Move them from places of struggle to spaces of blessing, from territories of lack to lands of abundance, from atmospheres of confusion to environments of clarity. Open doors that no man can shut, close doors that would lead them away from your best. Send divine connections, remove toxic relationships, provide supernatural provision. Grant them peace that surpasses understanding and joy that comes in the morning. Lord, let them feel your presence right now. Let every anxiety bow. Let every fear flee. Let every lie be silenced by your truth. They are chosen. They are loved. They are not forgotten. Their assignment is not over. It's just beginning. In the mighty name of Jesus, we receive this relocation. We receive this new assignment. We receive this fresh beginning. Amen. If this message has touched your heart, if you felt God speaking directly to your situation, I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and share what God spoke to you today. Maybe it was a word of encouragement, a confirmation of something you've been sensing, or simply the peace that comes from knowing you're not alone. Ask your questions, share your struggles. Let this community pray with you, because when we come together in faith, believing God's promises over each other's lives, miracles happen. And if this message blessed you, please share it with someone who needs to hear it. There's someone in your life, a friend, a family member, maybe someone you haven't spoken to in years, who needs to know that their story isn't over, that God is still writing their next chapter. Thank you for spending this time with me today. Thank you for opening your heart to receive what heaven wanted to speak over your life. If you haven't already, please subscribe to this channel and ring that notification bell. This community is growing, this family is expanding, and you're an important part of what God is doing here. Until we meet again, remember, you are loved, you are chosen, your assignment is not over, and the best is yet to come. Go in peace, walk in purpose, live in the confidence that the God who has brought you this far will carry you all the way home. Chosen one, God will do the greatest thing ever with you tonight. Get ready. Why have you been fighting battles that seem impossible to win? Why does it feel like everyone else gets their breakthrough while you're still waiting in the shadows? Why has God been silent when you needed His voice the most? Stop scrolling. Stop everything. Tonight is not just another night scrolling through your phone, hoping for encouragement. This is a supernatural appointment. Heaven has cleared its schedule. The angels have been dispatched, and God, the God of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, has written your name into tonight's story with His own finger. Here's the shocking truth they don't want you to know. You've been sabotaged by your own prayers. Every time you begged God to make you comfortable, you unknowingly asked Him to keep you small. Every time you prayed for an easy path, you prayed against your own destiny. Because chosen honest true, chosen ones are never made in comfort zones. Can you feel it? That electricity in your chest? That sudden awareness that something bigger than your circumstances is moving right now? That's not anxiety, that's recognition. Your spirit is remembering something your mind forgot. This isn't a message, it's a divine wire transfer. And you are the account it's being deposited into. Tonight, God is about to inject you with something so powerful, so life-altering, that your reality will split into before tonight and after tonight. But here's what will shock you. The pain you've endured, the silence you've suffered through, the delays that broke your heart, none of it was punishment. It was precision. God was lining you up for this exact moment. Every tear was an investment. Every rejection was a redirection. Every closed door was protection from a counterfeit destiny. If something in your chest is already stirring, if your hands are trembling as you read this, type, "I'm ready," in the comments right now. Let heaven see your agreement, because what I'm about to reveal will explain why you felt different your entire life, why normal never felt right, and why tonight, this very night, everything changes. Before we dive deeper into this urgent word from the throne room, I want to pause and thank every single one of you who has supported this message through super thanks. Your generosity means more than you know. You're not just donating, you're helping spread light to others who feel alone in their calling. Whether you give or not, I'm deeply grateful for your presence here, your support, your time, your attention. It all matters. And if this message resonates with your soul, go ahead and sow that seed of faith. By the end of this message, you'll understand why the pain, the silence, the delays, it was all setting you up for this one night. But I need you to understand something critical. If you miss this window, you may not see it open again for years. Heaven is waiting. Your destiny is listening. And God is about to do the greatest thing He's ever done with you. Get ready. Have you ever wondered why your life has been harder than everyone else's? Why you've carried burdens that would break most people, yet somehow you're still here, still breathing, still fighting? Why does it feel like God gave you the hardest assignment, while others seem to coast through life on easy street? Listen to me carefully, beloved. That strange sensation you've carried your entire life, that feeling of being different, of not quite fitting into the world's mold that wasn't a curse, that was your calling card from heaven. You see, there's something the enemy has been desperately trying to hide from you, something so powerful that if you truly understood it, you'd never doubt your worth again. You were never meant to blend in with the crowd. You were never designed to live an ordinary life. From the moment God breathed life into your lungs, you were marked for the extraordinary. But here's where it gets shocking. The very struggles that made you question God's love were actually his boot camp. Every betrayal, every financial crisis, every health scare, every sleepless night you've endured, it wasn't punishment. It was preparation. God wasn't trying to break you. He was forging you into a weapon of his glory. The prophet Jeremiah understood this divine mystery when God spoke to him. Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart. Jeremiah 1-5. Did you catch that? Before you took your first breath, before your first heartbreak, before your first failure, God had already written your name in his book of champions. You're not broken, dear one. You're battle-forged. Every scar on your heart is a medal of honor. Every tear you've cried has been collected in heaven's bottle. You think you've been forgotten, but you've been preserved like fine wine kept in God's cellar for the perfect moment to be uncorked. And that moment is tonight. But let me address the lie that's been tormenting you. You keep asking, did I miss my purpose? Am I too old? Have I wasted too much time? Let me tell you something that will shatter that deception once and for all. Moses was 80 years old when God called him to deliver an entire nation. Abraham was 75 when he received his promise. Sarah was 90 when she gave birth to destiny. Your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. Every gray hair on your head represents wisdom earned in battle. Every line on your face tells a story of resilience. Every ache in your body is proof that you've survived what was meant to destroy you. You're not too late, beloved. You're right on time. See, while others were building their kingdoms on sand, God was building character in you through concrete and steel. While they were chasing temporary success, he was installing eternal purpose in your DNA. While they were collecting trophies, you were collecting testimonies. And now, at this very moment, as you sit there feeling forgotten, overlooked, passed by, God is about to flip the script. Because everything you've been through, every storm you've weathered, every mountain you've climbed, it was all dress rehearsal for what he's about to do through you. You want to know why you've suffered more than others? Because ordinary people can't carry extraordinary assignments. You want to know why you've felt alone? Because God had to separate you from the crowd to speak to you without interference. You want to know why doors have been closed? Because he was protecting you from settling for less than his best. The pain you've endured isn't evidence that God doesn't love you. It's evidence that he trusts you with something the comfortable could never handle. Job lost everything, his children, his wealth, his health. But in the end, God gave him double for his trouble. Not because Job was perfect, but because Job was faithful. Your faithfulness in the fire has caught heaven's attention. Your refusal to give up when giving up made sense has moved the heart of God. Your choice to keep believing when belief seemed foolish has positioned you for a miracle so magnificent that when it happens, no one will be able to deny that the hand of the Lord is upon your life. Tonight, God is saying to you what he said to Jeremiah. Do not say, I am too young, or in your case, I am too old, for you must go to everyone I send you to and say whatever I command you. Your past doesn't disqualify you. Your age doesn't disqualify you. Your mistake don't disqualify you. Your willingness qualifies you. You see, God didn't keep you alive this long to fade into irrelevance. No, beloved, he didn't preserve you through every storm just to have you retire into obscurity. Every breath you're taking right now is borrowed time that he's giving you to complete the assignment he wrote for you before the foundation of the world. The very fact that you're still here, still listening, still believing, is proof that your story isn't over. It's proof that your greatest chapter hasn't been written yet. It's proof that God is just getting started with you. So tell me, are you ready to stop hiding behind your history and start walking in your destiny? Listen to me carefully. Chosen one, every single battle you fought, every door that slammed in your face, every relationship that crumbled, every dream that seemed to die, none of it was random. You've been living in a divine construction zone, and you didn't even know it. For decades, you've asked God, why me? Why this pain? Why this rejection? But what if I told you that every heartbreak was a deliberate demolition? What if every loss was God clearing the foundation for something so magnificent that your current mind can't even comprehend it? You see, most people think God's blessings come wrapped in comfort. They expect divine favor to feel like a warm blanket. But here's the shocking truth that will change everything. God's greatest gifts are forged in the furnace of opposition. Think about this, really. Think about it. When a master architect designs a skyscraper, does he start building on unstable ground? Never. He excavates, he digs deep, he removes everything that cannot support the weight of what's coming. And the deeper the foundation, the higher the building can reach. Your pain was the excavation, your tears were the blueprint, your battles were the construction crew. Let me take you to the ancient chambers of Scripture, where this pattern is written in blood and glory. Look at Joseph, favored by his father, gifted with visions, destined for greatness. But what happened next? His own brothers threw him into a pit. They sold him into slavery for 20 pieces of silver. Was God asleep? Was he distracted? Absolutely not. God was engineering a prime minister. Joseph spent years as a slave in Potiphar's house. Then came false accusations, imprisonment, forgotten promises. For over a decade, this chosen one sat in an Egyptian dungeon, probably wondering if God had abandoned him. But here's what Joseph couldn't see from his prison cell. God was building connections, establishing credibility, and positioning him for a moment when all of Egypt would bow to his wisdom. When famine struck the known world, who did Pharaoh turn to? Not the Egyptian advisors, not the court magicians. He turned to the Hebrew prisoner who had learned to interpret dreams in the darkness of despair. The pit prepared him for the palace, the prison qualified him for power. But it gets even more profound. Consider Moses, the man chosen to liberate an entire nation. You'd think God would fast-track his preparation, right? Wrong. Moses spent 40 years wandering in the wilderness as a shepherd. 40 years. That's longer than most of your careers, longer than you've been married, longer than you've lived in your house. Was God wasting time? Was he inefficient? He was building a deliverer who understood both royalty and rejection, privilege and poverty, power and powerlessness. The wilderness didn't weaken Moses, it weaponized him. Every day tending sheep was a masterclass in leadership. Every night under the desert stars was a seminary in solitude. Every moment of silence was God downloading the patience Moses would need to lead 2 million complaining Israelites through their own wilderness. The delay wasn't denial. It was divine preparation for impossible responsibility. Now bring this home to your own story. That job you didn't get, what if it would have kept you too comfortable to pursue your true calling? That relationship that ended, what if staying would have dulled the desperation that drives you to seek God? That financial crisis that brought you to your knees, what if it was God teaching you to depend on him before he entrusts you with real wealth? You've been asking God to explain your pain. But what if your pain is the explanation? What if every closed door was protecting you from a counterfeit destiny? What if every delay was God saying, "Not yet, beloved. You're not ready for the weight of what I'm about to place in your hands." Here's the revelation that will shatter your understanding. You weren't being punished. You were being prepared. You weren't being denied. You were being delayed for greater glory. The battles didn't break you, they trained you to carry the weight of what God is about to place in your hands tonight. Every rejection built your resilience, every betrayal deepened your discernment. Every season of silence sharpened your ability to hear God's whisper above the world's noise. You've been in spiritual boot camp, and graduation is tonight. But here's what most people miss. The greater your calling, the greater your preparation must be. God doesn't give Superman's responsibilities to someone with normal human strength. He doesn't entrust million-dollar ministries to people with $10 character. He doesn't place world-changing visions in hearts that haven't been proven in private pain. Your suffering wasn't your sentence, it was your seminary. Think about the strongest people you know. Did their strength come from easy lives? Think about the wisest counselors. Did their wisdom come from textbooks or from walking through their own valleys? Think about the most compassionate leaders. Did their empathy come from comfort or from learning to weep with those who weep? Your scars are your credentials. Your pain is your platform. Your story is your sermon. And tonight, this very night, God is about to inject something into your spirit that will connect every dot, heal every wound, and activate every gift that was forged in the fire of your trials. There's something divine waiting to enter your soul, and once it comes in, you'll look back at every battle and whisper, "Thank you, Lord, I understand now." But are you ready to receive what you've been unknowingly preparing for your entire life? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What is happening to you tonight is not abstract theology or wishful thinking. This is spiritual science. There is energy coursing through the universe right now, the same energy that spoke galaxies into existence, that raised Jesus from the dead, that parted the Red Sea, and it is moving toward you with supernatural precision. Do you feel it yet? Your body knows something your mind hasn't caught up to. That restlessness in your chest, that sudden sensitivity to everything around you, that feeling like electricity is running through your veins, that's not anxiety. That's the Holy Spirit preparing your cellular structure for divine recalibration. Here's what they never taught you in Sunday school. Trauma lives in your DNA. Every rejection you faced, every abandonment you endured, every time someone told you that you weren't enough, it didn't just hurt your feelings, it rewired your spiritual frequency. It created blockages in your energy field that have been choking your destiny for decades. But tonight, God is performing spiritual surgery without anesthesia. He's going into the deepest places of your cellular memory and removing the lies. Every self-doubt, every fear, every generational curse that told you to stay small, it's being extracted from your spiritual bloodstream. Romans 2 tells us, "Be transformed by the renewing of your mind." But the word transformed in the original Greek is metamorphos, the same word used to describe a caterpillar becoming a butterfly. This isn't a gentle makeover, this is complete reconstruction. And here's the truth that will shake you. He's not editing who you are, he's restoring who you were before the world touched you, before your father walked out, before your mother criticized your dreams, before that spouse betrayed you, before the church hurt you, before life convinced you that miracles were for other people. Every tear you cried was code, and tonight the system is being rewritten. Do you know what happens when divine energy enters traumatized cells? They remember their original programming. They remember they were created in the image of the Almighty. They remember they carry resurrection power. They remember they are more than conquerors. But I need you to understand something that might terrify you. You can't stay who you've been and receive what God has for you. The version of you that settled for scraps, that whispered when you should have roared, that hid your light under a bushel, that version has to die tonight. And that scares you, doesn't it? Because at least you knew how to survive in that old identity. You knew how to function in that broken place. But God is calling you out of survival mode and into dominion mode. How many years have you wasted believing you were ordinary? How many dreams did you bury because someone convinced you that God's promises were too good to be true? How many nights did you cry yourself to sleep, wondering if God had forgotten your address? He never forgot you. He was waiting for tonight. He was waiting for you to be desperate enough, broken enough, hungry enough to let him do what he's been wanting to do since the day you were born. This divine activation isn't gentle. When the Spirit of God moves, it disrupts everything. Your sleep patterns will change, your appetite will shift. People you thought were close to you will suddenly feel foreign. That's not coincidence, that's your frequency rising. You're being recalibrated to match heaven's frequency. And I need to warn you, not everyone is going to celebrate your transformation. Some people loved the broken version of you because it made them feel better about staying broken themselves. But you can't dim your light to make others comfortable in their darkness. Do you feel that fire rising in your chest right now? That burning sensation that feels like your ribcage can't contain what's happening inside you? That's not heartburn, that's holy fire. The prophet Jeremiah said, "His word was in my heart like a burning fire shut up in my bones." Tonight, God is lighting that same fire in you. And when it catches, when it really catches, you'll never be the same again. But here's what the enemy doesn't want you to know. This activation requires your agreement. God won't force this on you. He's offering it. He's extending his hand. But you have to take it. Stop looking around for permission. Stop waiting for someone to validate what you're feeling. Stop questioning whether you're worthy of this divine encounter. Worthy? You think this is about being worthy. This is about being chosen. And God doesn't choose the qualified, he qualifies the chosen. Right now, in this very moment, there are angels positioning themselves around your life. There are principalities and powers in high places taking note of what's happening in your spirit. Heaven is watching. Hell is nervous. And you're sitting at the crossroads of your destiny. If you feel fire rising in your chest, don't resist it. Write, "Activate me, Lord," in the comments. Say it aloud. This is the moment, because what happens in the next 72 hours will determine whether you step into the fullness of who God created you to be, or whether you shrink back into the familiar cage of your old limitations. And I have to ask you, how much longer are you going to wait for permission to become who you already are? Listen to me, chosen one. Every single night for the past decade, you've gone to bed carrying the same weight, the same questions, the same quiet desperation. God, when will it be my turn? When will you remember me? When will this pain finally make sense? Tonight, that version of you dies. You want to know why you felt like a stranger in your own life? Why success feels hollow when you achieve it? Why even your victories taste like defeat? Because you've been living someone else's script. You've been playing small in a story written for giants. But here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover. Every delay was strategic positioning. Every rejection was divine protection. Every closed door was God saying, "Not that way, beloved. You're going higher." The devil has been terrified of this moment your entire life. He's thrown everything at you: depression, betrayal, financial struggle, health scares, family drama, hoping to break you before you realize the truth. What truth? That you carry the same spirit that raised Jesus from the dead. Do you feel that? That sudden shift in the atmosphere? That's because something ancient is awakening in your DNA tonight. Something that's been dormant, waiting for this exact moment in history. You are not just flesh and blood stumbling through life. You are a walking miracle wrapped in human skin. For 70, 80, even 90 years, some of you have been wondering, God, what's my purpose? Did I miss it? Am I too late? You're not late. You're precisely on time. Moses was 80 when God called him to his greatest assignment. Colonel Sanders was 62 when he founded KFC. Grandma Moses didn't start painting until she was 78 and became one of America's most celebrated artists. Your age is not your limitation, it's your qualification. Every wrinkle tells a story of wisdom earned. Every gray hair is a crown of experience. Every scar is proof that you've survived what was meant to destroy you. The enemy thought he could wear you down with time, but God was using time to prepare you for supernatural acceleration. Right now, at this very second, Heaven is downloading something into your spirit that will change everything. Your thoughts are shifting. Your faith is expanding. Your tolerance for mediocrity is evaporating. You can feel it, can't you? That restlessness, that holy dissatisfaction. That's not anxiety, that's activation. Before tonight, you were unsure. After tonight, you are unstoppable. The prophet Habakkuk declared, "For the vision is yet for an appointed time. Though it tarry, wait for it, because it will surely come." Your appointed time isn't coming, it's here. Tonight is the intersection where your preparation meets God's acceleration. You've been asking God to bless what you're doing, but tonight, He's asking you to do what He's blessing. There's a massive difference. When you align with what heaven is already endorsing, impossibilities become inevitabilities. Mountains move, seas part, dead things resurrect. But I need you to understand something critical. This shift requires your participation. God won't force transformation on you. He's opening the door, but you must walk through it. He's calling your name, but you must answer. He's extending His hand, but you must take it. The enemy's worst nightmare is about to wake up you, knowing who you really are. You are not a victim of circumstances. You are a victor over them. You are not subject to limitation. You are a breaker of chains. You are not defined by your past. You are designed for your future. The same power that spoke galaxies into existence lives inside you. Isaiah 43:19 declares, "Behold, I will do a new thing. Now it shall spring forth. Shall ye not know it?" God is doing something new in your life tonight, not next month, not next year, tonight. Can you perceive it? Can you feel the shift happening in real time? This is your Jericho moment. For 7 days, the Israelites marched around those walls in silence, looking foolish to everyone watching. But on the 7th day, when they shouted, those walls didn't just crack, they completely collapsed. Tonight is your 7th day. Tonight is your shout. Tonight is your breakthrough. Some of you have been circling the same mountain for decades, the same financial struggles, the same health issues, the same relationship patterns, the same spiritual dryness. But tonight, the cycle breaks. Tonight, you don't just overcome, you obliterate. Declare it now with everything in you. I will not shrink. Say it again. I will not shrink. The world tried to make you smaller, but God is calling you to expand. Religion tried to make you quiet, but heaven is calling you to roar. Your past tried to define you, but your future is redefining everything. You are stepping into a dimension where your words carry weight, where your prayers move mountains, where your presence shifts atmospheres. This is not self-help, this is supernatural help. This is not positive thinking, this is prophetic living. But here's what will shock you. This message isn't just for you. God is using you as a catalyst for a chain reaction. Right now, share this message with another chosen one. Text it to that family member who's been struggling. Send it to that friend who's given up hope. Tonight is not just for you, it's a divine domino effect. When one chosen one awakens, it creates a ripple that awakens others. Your breakthrough becomes their breakthrough. Your victory becomes their victory. Your testimony becomes their catalyst. The enemy thought he could isolate you, but God is connecting you to an army of awakened believers who refuse to stay silent, refuse to stay small, refuse to stay stuck. But tell me this, are you ready to stop being the same person you were when you started watching this message? Listen carefully, beloved. What God downloaded into your spirit tonight isn't just a blessing, it's sacred technology. And sacred technology requires sacred protection. You can feel it, can't you? That gentle fire coursing through your veins, that sudden clarity where confusion once lived, that peace that doesn't make sense given your circumstances. You're glowing now. Your frequency has shifted. Your spiritual DNA has been rewritten. And here's what nobody warned you about. Not everyone will celebrate it. Matthew 7-6 cuts straight to the bone. Do not throw your pearls to pigs, or they will trample them under their feet and turn and tear you to pieces. Jesus wasn't being harsh. He was being protective. Some people in your life right now, people you love, people you trust, they're about to become spiritual pigs around your pearls. Why? Because light exposes. Your old drinking buddy who used to validate your complaints, they're going to feel uncomfortable around the new peace you carry. Your family member who bonded with you over drama and dysfunction, they're going to miss the chaos you used to bring to every gathering. Your friend who loved you broken because it made them feel better about their own brokenness, they're about to become your biggest enemy. And here's the brutal truth that's going to save your destiny. You cannot take everyone with you where God is leading you. Think about this for a moment. When the Israelites left Egypt, the Bible tells us in Exodus 12:38 that a mixed multitude followed them out. These weren't covenant people. They were hangers-on, opportunists who saw the blessing but didn't understand the burden. And what happened? They became the first to complain, the first to doubt, the first to want to go back to slavery when the journey got difficult. Who is your mixed multitude? Who in your life celebrates your blessings but can't handle your boundaries? Who cheers when you succeed but sabotages when you soar? Who loves you ascending but resents you arriving? Proverbs 4:23 doesn't suggest, it commands. Above all else, guard your heart, for everything you do flows from it. Your heart isn't just the seat of emotion, it's the repository of revelation. It's where God stores the downloads, the dreams, the divine strategies for your next level. And if you let the wrong people have access to your heart space, they'll contaminate what God made pure. A flame this bright attracts both warmth seekers and shadow dwellers. The warmth seekers, they're genuine. They see your light, and it reminds them of their own potential. They celebrate your growth because it gives them hope for their own transformation. These people will honor what God is doing in you. But the shadow dwellers, they're drawn to your light for a different reason. They want to drain it, dim it, control it. They can't stand that you're rising without their permission. They'll disguise themselves as concerned friends, worried family members, practical advisors. But their real agenda is to pull you back into the darkness where they feel comfortable. How do you know the difference? Warmth seekers ask questions like, how did you find such peace? What's your secret? Can you pray for me too? They want to learn, grow, ascend with you. Shadow dwellers ask different questions. Don't you think you're taking this God thing too far? Remember when you used to be fun? Who do you think you are now? They want to remind you of who you used to be because your transformation threatens their stagnation. And here's where it gets really dangerous, chosen one. The people closest to you, your family, your oldest friends, your romantic partner, they might be the hardest to protect your light from. Why? Because they knew you before. They remember your weaknesses, your failures, your moments of doubt. And sometimes, unconsciously, they need you to stay at that level so they don't feel left behind. Jesus himself experienced this. Mark 6:4 records his words, "A prophet is not without honor except in his own town, among his relatives and in his own home." The people who knew him as just the carpenter's son couldn't receive him as the Messiah. Their familiarity bred contempt for his calling. Is your own family struggling to receive the new you? This isn't about arrogance or spiritual pride. This is about preservation. What God gave you tonight is so valuable that hell itself is strategizing to steal it before it takes root. And the enemy's favorite strategy? Use the people you trust most. So what do you do? How do you honor relationships while protecting your revelation? You become selectively transparent. Not everyone deserves access to your testimony. Not everyone has earned the right to hear your God stories. Some people are still operating in the Egypt mindset. They'll hear about your promised land and try to convince you that slavery was safer. You can't go back to old friends who only knew you broken. You can't return to old habits that kept you small. You can't tolerate old chaos that masqueraded as normal. The frequency you're operating on now is incompatible with dysfunction. And yes, this might mean some lonely seasons. Yes, this might mean some misunderstood moments. Yes, this might mean some people question your sanity. But let me ask you this. Would you rather be understood by people who can't see your destiny, or would you rather be obedient to the God who downloaded it into you? Your anointing is precious, your calling is sacred, your transformation is holy, and holy things require holy protection. So guard what God gave you tonight, not with paranoia, but with wisdom, not with isolation, but with intention. Because what you protect today will empower you tomorrow. But here's the question that will determine your next decade. Will you have the courage to honor what God made sacred, even when the people you love try to make it common? You know what nobody tells you about being chosen? It hurts. Not just emotionally, physically, spiritually. Down to your bones, down to your soul. Look at your hands right now. Really look at them. Those lines, those age spots, those scars, each one tells a story of sacrifice. Each wrinkle is a testament to battles fought in silence. You've carried glory in a vessel that was never meant to hold this much weight, and it's been breaking you open piece by piece. This is the cost nobody warned you about. When God marks you for more, the weight feels unbearable. While others sleep peacefully, you wrestle with visions. While others complain about small problems, you carry the pain of generations. While others live for themselves, you've been bleeding out for everyone else's healing. And now you're sitting there thinking, I gave so much and got so little back. The years you spent pouring out when your own cup was empty. The nights you prayed for others while your own heart was shattered. The times you held families together while your own world fell apart. Where was God then? Here's what will shock you. He was right there, collecting every tear. Psalm 56:8 says, You have collected all my tears in your bottle. Not some of them, all of them. Every tear you cried in that hospital room, every tear over that wayward child, every tear when you felt forgotten, overlooked, used up. But listen to me carefully. You're looking at this all wrong. You think you've been losing. You think you've been depleted. You think you're too tired, too old, too broken to matter anymore. You're not broken, you're breaking open, like alabaster before the oil pours out. Remember the woman with the alabaster box? She had to break it to release the perfume. The breaking wasn't destruction, it was delivery. The fracturing wasn't failure, it was freedom. And when that box shattered, the entire house was filled with fragrance that lasted for days. Your breaking has been your making. Every crack in your heart has become a channel for God's love to flow through. Every wound has become a window for His light to shine out of. You say, I don't feel strong enough anymore. But David said in Psalm 73:26, My flesh and my heart may fail, but God is the strength of my heart and my portion forever. Your weakness is not disqualification, it's divine invitation. When you're too tired to stand, God carries you. When you're too weak to speak, He becomes your voice. When you're too broken to believe, He becomes your faith. But here's the revelation that will transform everything. Every scar on your body, every heartbreak that nearly destroyed you, every "Why me, Lord?" that you whispered in the darkness was a map, a code, leading you here, to this moment, to this night, to this divine appointment. You think you've been wandering aimlessly through pain, but you've been following a precise GPS designed by heaven. Every detour was deliberate. Every delay was divine. Every disappointment was a setup for this appointed time. Moses spent 40 years in the wilderness before the burning bush. Joseph spent years in prison before the palace. David ran through caves before he claimed his crown. Their waiting wasn't wasted, was purposeful preparation. And your pain, your struggles, your sleepless nights and heavy heart, it was God creating capacity in you for the glory He's about to pour out. You couldn't have handled this level of anointing when you were younger. You didn't have the depth then. You didn't have the wisdom. You didn't have the spiritual endurance that only comes through divine suffering. But now you're ready. The enemy convinced you that your best years are behind you, that your prime is past, that God is done with you because you're tired, because you're aging, because you've been through too much. That's the biggest lie he's ever told. Your gray hair isn't a sign of decline, it's a crown of wisdom. Proverbs 16:31 calls it a crown of splendor. Your wrinkles aren't marks of defeat, they're evidence of endurance. Your tired body isn't a liability, it's a sacred vessel that's been tested and proven faithful. God doesn't need your youth, He needs your yielding. He doesn't need your energy, He needs your experience. He doesn't need your strength, He needs your surrender. And tonight, all that pain is about to make perfect sense. Every tear you've cried has been watering seeds of destiny that are about to bloom. Every prayer you've prayed in desperation is about to be answered with acceleration. Every time you felt like giving up, but didn't, you were actually graduating to your next level. You've been asking God, when will it be my turn? But what if I told you that every moment of suffering was your turn? Every season of carrying others was your training. Every night of intercession was your internship for the ministry He's about to release through you. The glory you've been carrying is about to be revealed. But here's what you must understand. The very thing that's been breaking you is about to become the thing that blesses others. Your pain is about to become your platform. Your mess is about to become your message. Your wounds are about to become your wisdom. So tell me, you ready to stop seeing your scars as shame and start seeing them as sacred? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. What you're about to discover will shatter everything you thought you knew about yourself. For decades, you've been walking around with amnesia, divine amnesia. The enemy didn't just attack your circumstances, he attacked your memory. He made you forget who you were before the world told you who to be. But tonight, God is performing spiritual surgery on your very DNA. You see, your DNA doesn't just carry your grandmother's eyes or your father's stubborn streak. Hidden within those microscopic spirals is something science can't measure, but heaven can activate your divine blueprint, the original you. The you that existed in God's mind before trauma rewrote your story, before religion buried your gifts, before life convinced you that ordinary was your ceiling. God is not just healing you tonight, He's reprogramming your spiritual nervous system. Think about this. Why do you think certain scriptures make you weep when you read them? Why do worship songs sometimes hit you like lightning? Why do you feel homesick for a place you've never been? Because buried in your cellular memory is the echo of Eden, the frequency of your true identity, the sound of who you were meant to be. But here's what will shock you: the church never taught you this. They told you to be humble, stay small, don't get too big for your britches. They programmed you to believe that suffering was holiness and that breakthrough was somehow selfish. They lied to you. You weren't created to survive. You were encoded to dominate. And God said, "Let us make man in our image, after our likeness, and let them have dominion." Genesis 1:26. Dominion. Not depression, not defeat, not barely getting by. Dominion. But trauma came and buried that truth under layers of survival programming. Generational curses whispered lies into your bloodline until you couldn't remember your royal heritage. Religious spirits convinced you that power was prideful and that your gifts were somehow dangerous. No more. Tonight, God is stripping away every false identity that was layered over your divine DNA, every label that wasn't His, every limitation that wasn't from heaven, every lie that made you smaller than your calling. Can you feel it happening right now? That strange warmth in your chest, that sudden clarity cutting through decades of confusion, that's your spiritual nervous system coming back online. Your hands weren't made just to work, they were designed to heal. Your voice wasn't given just to speak, it was tuned to prophesy. Your mind wasn't created just to think, it was wired to receive divine downloads that can shift entire atmospheres. But you've been walking around like a Lamborghini trying to run on lawnmower gas. You've been operating on survival mode when you were built for supernatural acceleration. Listen to what Jeremiah discovered. Before I formed thee in the belly, I knew thee, and before thou camest forth out of the womb, I sanctified thee. Jeremiah 1-5. Before your first breath, before your first heartbreak, before anyone told you what you couldn't do, God had already sanctified you, set you apart, encoded you with purpose. And tonight, He's activating what religion put to sleep. Here's the truth that will rock your world. You don't need another sermon, you need to remember your assignment. And it's been coded into your cells since before your first breath. That burning you feel in your bones when you see injustice? That's not anger that's calling. That ache in your soul when you see people hurting? That's not sympathy, that's spiritual technology. Those dreams that seem too big for your bank account? Those aren't fantasies, those are blueprints downloaded directly from the throne room. But the enemy has spent years convincing you that those stirrings were selfish ambition, that those dreams were ego, that those gifts were too dangerous to unwrap. He was terrified of what would happen if you ever remembered. Because when a chosen one remembers their true identity, kingdoms shift. When God's anointed steps into their divine DNA, principalities panic. When heaven's encoded warriors stop playing small, hell starts scrambling. Right now, as these words wash over your spirit, ancient mantles are being restored. Gifts that were buried under decades of doubt are clawing their way to the surface. Callings that were silenced by trauma are finding their voice again. That prophetic insight your grandmother carried, it's in your DNA. That healing anointing your great-grandfather walked in before religion told him to be normal, it's awakening in your bloodline. Those breakthrough prayers that moved mountains in your family history, that same power is encoded in your spiritual genetics. And God is flipping the switch tonight. But here's what you need to understand. This rewiring isn't comfortable. When God restores divine memory, everything false has to go. That's why you might feel emotional right now. That's why certain relationships might feel different. That's why normal might suddenly feel like a prison. You're not having a breakdown, you're having a breakthrough of biblical proportions. Your spiritual nervous system is remembering how to carry the weight of anointing. Your soul is stretching to accommodate the fullness of your calling. Your mind is expanding to handle revelations that could change generations. This is what Paul meant when he said, "But we have the mind of Christ." 1 Corinthians 2:16. The mind of Christ. Not the mind of survival, not the mind of scarcity, not the mind of settling, the mind that spoke worlds into existence. If you're feeling the fire inside your chest again, don't scroll, declare it right now. I remember now. Because what's awakening in you tonight isn't just personal breakthrough, it's generational restoration. It's the recovery of everything the enemy thought he stole. It's the return of the anointing your bloodline was always meant to carry. And this is only the beginning of what God is about to unlock in your life. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. There's something happening in your life right now that's breaking your heart, and I need to tell you the truth about it. The people you thought would celebrate your breakthrough are walking away. The friends who said they'd always be there have gone silent. The family members who once understood you now look at you like you're speaking a foreign language. And you're asking yourself, What did I do wrong? Why does getting closer to God feel like getting farther from everyone else? Here's the shocking truth that nobody wants to tell you. They didn't reject you. They couldn't breathe at the altitude you were being called to. You see, when God begins this sacred work in your life, when He starts purifying your spirit and elevating your consciousness, something supernatural happens. Your frequency changes, your energy shifts, and suddenly the people who were comfortable with the old you become deeply uncomfortable with the new you. They don't even understand why. They'll make excuses. They'll say you've changed, that you think you're better than them, that you've gotten too spiritual, too intense, too different. But what they're really saying is this: you're reminding me of everything I'm not willing to become. You're not arrogant, dear one. You're an eagle in a cage built for pigeons. And when an eagle spreads its wings, the pigeons panic. Not because the eagle is threatening them, but because the eagle is showing them what they were never willing to reach for. Your transformation is exposing their stagnation. Your freedom is highlighting their fear. The Bible tells us in Isaiah 55:8-9, "For my thoughts are not your thoughts, neither are your ways my ways, declares the Lord. As the heavens are higher than the earth, so are my ways higher than your ways, and my thoughts than your thoughts." When God lifts you to His frequency, you begin to think like He thinks, see like He sees, love like He loves. And that terrifies people who are still operating on earthly frequencies. They can't understand your peace in the storm. They can't comprehend your joy in the valley. They can't relate to your faith in the impossible. So they distance themselves. They whisper about how you've changed. They roll their eyes when you mention God's goodness. They stop inviting you places, stop calling, stop caring, and it hurts. Oh, how it hurts. But let me tell you something that will revolutionize your understanding. This separation isn't punishment, it's protection. God is removing people from your life who would contaminate the work He's doing in you. He's creating space for divine connections, for kingdom relationships, for people who will fan your flame instead of trying to blow it out. Think about it. When Jesus began His ministry, did His own family understand? Number. In Mark 3:21, the Bible says, "When His family heard about this, they went to take charge of Him, for they said, 'He is out of his mind.'" His own family thought He had lost his mind. When Moses came down from Mount Sinai after spending time with God, his face was so radiant that the Israelites couldn't even look at him. Exodus 34:30 says, "When Aaron and all the Israelites saw Moses, his face was radiant, and they were afraid to come near him." Do you see the pattern? Divine transformation creates separation. It's not a bug in God's system, it's a feature. You're grieving right now. You're mourning relationships that feel like they died. You're wondering why the people who said they loved you can't love this version of you. And that pain is real. That loneliness is legitimate. But here's what I need you to understand. They're not leaving because you're wrong. They're leaving because you're right. You're right to seek God with all your heart. You're right to pursue holiness. You're right to demand more from life than mediocrity and spiritual lukewarmness. You're right to believe that God has something greater for you than what you've settled for. And their discomfort with your rightness doesn't make you responsible for their comfort. Listen, when God called Abraham out of Ur, He didn't say, "Bring everyone with you." He said, "Leave your country, your people and your father's household." Genesis 12:1. Abraham had to choose between his calling and his comfort zone. He couldn't have both. You're facing the same choice right now. You can shrink back down to make others comfortable, dim your light so they don't feel overshadowed, quiet your praise so they don't feel convicted. Or you can keep rising, keep growing, keep becoming who God created you to be. The truth is, some people in your life were only meant to be there for a season. They were assignments, not lifetime appointments. They came to teach you something, show you something, or help you through something. but they were never meant to go where you're going. Your destiny is too important to be derailed by people who don't have the spiritual stamina to run with you. This is your sacred detox. God is purging your life of relationships that would poison your purpose, connections that would corrupt your calling, and influences that would infect your faith. Yes, it's lonely at the top. Yes, it's isolating to be set apart. But remember what Jesus said in Matthew 10:37. Anyone who loves their father or mother more than me is not worthy of me. Anyone who loves their son or daughter more than me is not worthy of me. You cannot love people more than you love your calling and still fulfill your destiny. So here's what I need you to do right now. I need you to stop chasing people who are running from the light in you. Stop apologizing for your growth. Stop shrinking to fit into spaces you've outgrown. Write this declaration in the comments right now. I release what can't rise with me. It may hurt, but it will set you free. Because what's coming next in your life requires space. Space for new relationships. Space for divine connections. Space for people who will celebrate your light instead of cursing your brightness. The question isn't whether you're losing people. The question is, are you ready for who God is bringing? Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Right now, as you're sitting there, something ancient is stirring inside your chest. You feel it, don't you? That restlessness, that frustration, that voice that whispers, there's more. There has to be more. You've been told you're too old. You've been told your time has passed. Society looks at your grey hair, your weathered hands, your slower step, and whispers, sit down, be quiet, your season is over. But what if I told you that everything you've been told about age and purpose is a demonic lie designed to silence the very voice heaven is waiting to hear? What if your greatest moment isn't behind you, it's building inside you right now? Moses was 80 years old when he stood before a burning bush that refused to be consumed. 80. By today's standards, he should have been in a retirement home, playing checkers and complaining about his arthritis. Instead, God looked at 8 decades of life experience, 8 decades of preparation, 8 decades of wisdom earned through pain, and said, now you're ready. The fire that called to Moses, that same fire is burning in your bones tonight. You didn't just survive the betrayals, you were saved for this. You didn't just endure the heartbreak, you were anointed in fire. You didn't just make it through the financial struggles, the health scares, the family drama, you were being forged into a weapon heaven could trust with real power. But here's what will shock you. The enemy has spent decades convincing you that your voice doesn't matter, that your ideas are outdated, that your dreams expired with your youth. Why? Because he knows something about you that you've forgotten. He knows that your voice carries the weight of decades. He knows that when you speak, people listen differently. He knows that your prayers have been seasoned with suffering, and seasoned prayers move mountains. You are not a has-been. You are a prophet with a microphone. Think about it. Who do people trust more, a 25-year-old with theories or a 65-year-old with scars? Who carries more authority? Someone who read about storms or someone who survived them? The wisdom in your bones, the discernment in your spirit, the fire that refuses to die, that's not accident. That's divine assignment. Abraham was 75 when God called him to leave everything familiar. Sarah was 90 when she held the promise in her arms. Anna was 84 when she recognized the Messiah in the temple. These weren't mistakes, these weren't exceptions. This was God's pattern, using seasoned saints to speak into desperate times. You didn't just survive, you were saved for this. You didn't just endure, you were anointed in fire. But I need to tell you something that might disturb you. Your silence is killing your assignment. Every day you sit quiet, every moment you convince yourself someone younger can do it better. Every time you swallow the words God gave you to speak, you're not being humble. You're being rebellious. Because God didn't preserve you through cancer to keep you quiet. He didn't walk you through divorce to silence your testimony. He didn't sustain you through depression to muffle your voice. He saved you to speak. Jeremiah felt this fire. Listen to his words. His word is in my heart like a fire shut up in my bones. I am weary of holding it in. Indeed, I cannot. That's what's happening to you right now. That restlessness isn't restlessness. It's revelation trying to birth itself through your voice. You have stories that need to be told, wisdom that needs to be shared, ideas that could change lives, dreams that seem impossible but feel inevitable. That book you've never written, that business you've never started, that conversation you've never had with that estranged family member, that ministry you've talked yourself out of because, who am I? Who are you? You're a walking miracle with a voice that hell cannot duplicate. You didn't just survive, you were saved for this. You didn't just endure, you were anointed in fire. Your generation witnessed things younger people only read about. You lived through decades that shaped history. You survived wars, cultural revolutions, technological explosions. You buried parents, raised children, weathered storms that would have broken weaker souls. And God preserved you through all of it for one reason, because this moment needs your voice. The world is drowning in noise from people who have never truly suffered. They're preaching hope they've never needed, selling solutions to problems they've never faced. But you've been in the valley. You've walked through the shadow of death. You felt the fire and came out refined, not consumed. That makes your voice dangerous to darkness. This is why the enemy whispers, "You're too old. Nobody wants to hear from you. Your time is over." Because he knows that when seasoned saints start speaking truth, when gray-haired warriors start prophesying, when weathered voices start declaring God's goodness, revival breaks out. You didn't just survive, you were saved for this. You didn't just endure, you were anointed in fire. Moses led millions out of slavery at 80. Caleb conquered mountains at 85. John received revelation on Patmos in his 90s. Your age isn't your limitation, it's your qualification. So let me ask you directly, what if God preserved you for such a time as this? What if every year you've lived, every lesson you've learned, every scar you've earned was preparation for a moment like tonight? What if your greatest chapter isn't your last chapter, it's your next chapter? If your voice is rising right now, if something is burning in your chest, if you feel that ancient fire stirring in your bones, type, "I will not die quietly." You are a voice of awakening, because the prophet you've been hiding is about to be revealed. Chosen one, what I'm about to reveal will disturb everything you thought you knew about God's timing. For the past 72 hours, heaven has been operating on a schedule you weren't told about. While you've been living your normal life, going through your routines, heaven has been counting down to this exact moment. This is not just another message you stumbled across tonight. This is night 2 of a divine activation sequence. 3 nights ago, something shifted in the spiritual realm. The Father looked at his watch. Yes, God keeps time, and he said, "It's time." Angels received new assignments, scrolls were unsealed, and your name was written on a list that only heaven can see. Night 1 was your awakening. Did you feel it? That restlessness 3 nights ago, that strange stirring in your soul you couldn't explain. That wasn't insomnia, that was heaven downloading the first activation into your spirit. God was preparing your spiritual system for what's coming tonight. Tonight, right? No is night 2. This is your alignment. But here's what will shake you to your core. Most chosen ones miss night 2. They feel the stirring on night 1, but they dismiss it. They go back to sleep. They return to normal. And they forfeit the greatest window God will ever open over their lives. You want to know why you've been waiting so long for your breakthrough? Because you've been praying for a door when God was preparing to tear down the entire wall. You've been asking for a promotion when He's been designing a complete life reconstruction. You've been begging for healing when He's been orchestrating your resurrection. The prophet Habakkuk cried out, "How long, Lord, must I call for help, but you do not listen?" But God's response will stagger you. "Look at the nations and watch and be utterly amazed, for I am going to do something in your days that you would not believe, even if you were told." Something you would not believe, even if you were told. Do you understand what that means? God is about to move in your life so dramatically, so supernaturally, that if someone described it to you tomorrow, you wouldn't have the faith to believe it could happen to someone like you. But here's the terrifying truth. This window only stays open for 3 nights. Why 3? Because God operates in patterns of perfection. Jesus was in the tomb for 3 days before resurrection. Jonah was in the belly of the fish for 3 days before deliverance. The children of Israel marched around Jericho for 7 days, but it was on day 3 that God told them the walls would fall. Tonight, something inside you is being realigned. Your spiritual frequency is being recalibrated to match heaven's frequency. But this process is sacred and it's time-sensitive. What happened to you 3 nights ago? Did you have vivid dreams? Did old memories surface unexpectedly? Did you feel emotional for no reason? That wasn't random. God was unlocking chambers in your heart that have been sealed since childhood. He was awakening gifts that have been dormant since birth. But tonight, night 2's different. Tonight is about alignment. Tonight, God is positioning every piece of your life like a master chess player setting up for checkmate. Relationships are being adjusted. Opportunities are being positioned. Even your enemies are being moved into place to serve your destiny. You've been wondering why certain people walked out of your life recently. Why doors slammed shut that you thought were meant for you. Why the silence from heaven felt so deafening. It wasn't rejection. It was preparation. God was clearing the frequency so you could hear Him clearly during these 3 nights. The prophet Jeremiah heard God say, "Before I formed you in the womb I knew you. Before you were born I set you apart." But here's what most people miss. God didn't just set you apart. He set apart this specific time in your life for this specific revelation. Tonight, as you listen to these words, synapses in your brain are firing differently. Your heart rate has changed. Something in your cellular structure is responding to divine frequency. This isn't psychology. This is spiritual physics. This is heaven interfacing with your human system. But I need you to understand something critical. Not everyone who experiences night 1 makes it to night 2. And not everyone who experiences night 2 makes it to night 3. Fear stops some. Doubt eliminates others. But the most dangerous threat to your breakthrough isn't fear or doubt. It's familiarity. Going back to normal. Dismissing what God is doing as coincidence. Allowing the sacred to become ordinary. You're sitting at a crossroads right now. You can close this video, go back to scrolling, return to your routine, and wonder for the rest of your life what might have been. Or you can lean in, you can stay awake, you can guard this moment like the treasure it is. Because in less than 24 hours, night 3 begins. The final activation, the assignment download, the moment when God stops preparing you and starts positioning you. When He stops developing your character and starts deploying your calling. Tomorrow night may be the night your calling gets its instructions. But here's what I need you to know. If you miss night 3, this window may not open again for years, maybe decades. God doesn't repeat divine sequences. He gives them once at the appointed time to those who are watching. The question burning in heaven right now is this: will you be awake when God arrives tomorrow night? You ever wonder why you didn't die that year? The year when everything fell apart, when your health failed, when the doctor's words hung in the air like a death sentence, when your own family turned their backs on you right when you needed them most? Why didn't you lose your mind when it would have made perfect sense to just give up? Let me tell you something that'll shake you to your core. You survived because you were coded with resilience. Heaven implanted, hell resistant. And tonight, God's about to show you exactly why He kept you breathing when others didn't make it. But first, let's get real about the wounds you've been carrying in silence. That rejection in your own family. The way they looked at you like you were the problem, like your faith was too much, your dreams too big, your heart too open. They called you dramatic when you cried. They called you crazy when you prophesied. They made you feel like an outsider at your own dinner table, the sting of being misunderstood by the very people who were supposed to love you unconditional, that cut deeper than any physical pain, didn't it? And the church hurt. Oh, the church hurt. You gave your heart, your time, your last $20 to people who wore crosses around their necks but had knives behind their backs. You watched pastors fall, leaders lie, and saints turn into serpents right before your eyes. You've sat in pews surrounded by hundreds of people singing about God's love while feeling more alone than you've ever felt in your life. Then came the betrayal late in life. When you thought you were done with surprises, when you believed people had shown you their true colors, someone you trusted maybe for decades showed you that evil doesn't retire. That friend who spread your business, that business partner who stole your ideas, that person you confided in who used your secrets as weapons against you. You know what I'm talking about, don't you? That loneliness that doesn't go away, even in rooms full of people. You can be at family gatherings, church services, community events, and still feel like you're watching life through bulletproof glass, connected but untouchable, present but invisible. Here's the question that'll change everything. Why are you still here? Why didn't that heart attack finish the job? Why didn't that depression swallow you whole? Why didn't that financial ruin destroy you completely? Why are you still standing when people half your age are falling apart over problems that wouldn't even register on your scale of survived catastrophes? Because God didn't just rescue you, He recalibrated you in the fire. Listen to what the word says in Isaiah 43:2. When you pass through the waters, I will be with you. And when you pass through the rivers, they will not sweep over you. When you walk through the fire, you will not be burned. The flames will not set you ablaze. Notice it doesn't say if you pass through, it says when. God knew the fire was coming. He planned for it. Because He needed to burn out of you everything that wasn't authentically, powerfully, divinely you. Every betrayal was a burning away of false loyalty. Every rejection was a removal of toxic acceptance. Every silent night when you cried yourself to sleep was God downloading into your spirit the strength you'd need for what's coming next. You think you're broken, but you're not. You're battle-tested. You think you're damaged goods, but you're actually premium quality, refined by pressure, strengthened by pain, purified by problems that would have destroyed lesser souls. The enemy tried to kill you with that diagnosis, but it only taught you how temporary the physical body really is. He tried to destroy you through that divorce, but it only showed you that your identity was never wrapped up in another person's opinion of you. He tried to finish you with that financial crisis, but it only proved that your security was never in your bank account, it was in your unshakable faith. You weren't just surviving, you were being equipped. Every wound was a wisdom download. Every scar was a strength indicator. Every tear you cried was watering the seeds of a testimony that would one day save someone else's life. You've been carrying survivor's guilt, wondering why you made it when others didn't. Stop wondering. Start realizing you made it because you were chosen to make it. Not because you're better than them, but because your assignment required this level of testing. God looked down the timeline of your life and said, This one can handle what I'm about to put on them. This one won't quit when it gets ugly. This one will praise me in the prison. This one will trust me in the fire. This one will worship me in the wilderness. The pain you've endured wasn't random, it was strategic. Every attack had a purpose. To build in you a faith so unshakable, a spirit so unbreakable, a heart so full of divine love, that when you walk into a room, the very atmosphere changes. You're not a victim of your circumstances. You're a veteran of spiritual warfare. And tonight, God's about to show you exactly what all that training was for. But here's what's about to shock you even more. The greatest battle you've ever faced is about to become your greatest victory. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. I know you've been carrying a question that's been eating at your soul for years, maybe decades. Why did God go silent when you needed him most? You remember those nights, don't you? When you were 25, 30, 40 years old, crying out to heaven until your voice cracked. You prayed until your knees bled. You fasted until your body shook. And what did you get back? Silence. Cold, deafening silence that made you wonder if God had moved to another galaxy and forgotten to leave a forwarding address. You thought God ghosted you. You thought your prayers died in the dark, buried under years of unanswered cries and unmet needs. You were wrong. Here's what the enemy doesn't want you to understand. Every single day of that silence, God was working. Not despite your pain, but through your pain. Not around your tears, but with your tears. That season wasn't abandonment, it was God's watchtower, his chisel, his classroom. Think about Moses. 40 years shepherding sheep in the middle of nowhere after fleeing Egypt. Do you think Moses didn't wonder if God had forgotten his promise? Do you think he didn't question why the God who spoke through burning bushes had gone completely mute? But Exodus 2:25 tells us the truth. God heard their groaning, and he remembered his covenant. God was not absent. God was preparing. You see, dear one, there are assignments so sacred, so powerful, so world-changing, that they cannot be entrusted to someone who hasn't been broken down and built back up by the very hands of the Almighty. Your silence wasn't punishment, it was preparation for a divine assignment that couldn't be rushed. You didn't fail. You were being forged. In those dark years when nothing made sense, when doors slammed shut in your face, when people you trusted walked away, God was removing everything that would interfere with what he was about to do through you. He was stripping away your need for human approval, your dependence on worldly systems, your faith in anything except him. You weren't stuck. You were being synchronized. Joseph understood this. 13 years in slavery and prison. 13 years of watching other people get promoted while he rotted in a dungeon for a crime he didn't commit. But Genesis 41-46 reveals the mystery. Joseph was 30 years old when he entered the service of Pharaoh, king of Egypt. 30 years old. Not 20, not 25, 30. Because God needed those extra years to prepare Joseph's character for the weight of Egypt's future. What if listen to this careful, what if every year of your silence was God adding another layer of wisdom to your soul, another degree of compassion to your heart, another level of unshakable faith to your foundation? You thought you were being punished for some secret sin. You thought you were being overlooked while God blessed everyone else. But the truth is, you were being formatted for something so extraordinary that it required years of divine programming. Here's the shocking reality. The very thing that convinced you God had abandoned you was actually proof that he had chosen you for something beyond your wildest imagination. Think about it. Why would the enemy work so hard to silence someone who wasn't dangerous? Why would hell itself conspire to keep someone quiet who didn't carry a voice that could shake nations? Your silence wasn't evidence of your insignificance, it was evidence of your importance. David knew this. Anointed as king at 16, but didn't touch the throne until he was 30. 14 years of running, hiding, dodging spears, living in caves. 14 years of asking God, when? When will you fulfill what you promised? But 1 Samuel 16:13 says, "The Spirit of the Lord came powerfully upon David from that day on." The Spirit was on him during the cave years. The anointing was active during the silent years. And it's been active on you too. Every rejection you faced was God protecting you from a counterfeit crown. Every delay you endured was God ensuring you'd be ready for the real one. Every silent night was God downloading wisdom into your spirit that you couldn't have received any other way. You weren't forgotten. You were being formatted. Right now, as you hear these words, something is shifting in the atmosphere around your life. Those years of preparation are about to collide with this moment of activation. The silence is breaking. The wait is ending. The hidden years are giving birth to the revealed years. But here's what you need to understand. You can't step into what's coming with the mindset of what's past. The version of you that survived the silence is not the same version that will walk in the sound. You have been fundamentally changed by those years, and the world is about to see the fruit of that transformation. So let me ask you this. Are you ready to stop mourning the years you think you lost and start celebrating the person those years created? Are you ready to see that every unanswered prayer was actually God saying, "Not yet, because what I have planned is bigger than what you're asking for"? Because tonight, the silence breaks, and tomorrow, the world will hear the roar that was cultivated in your quietest moments. You've been living with a haunting question, haven't you? Deep in the middle of sleepless nights, when the world goes quiet and your soul gets loud, you've whispered it into the darkness. God, what am I really here for? You've watched others walk confidently into their calling while you felt like you're stumbling through fog, carrying a weight you can't name, fighting for a purpose you can't see. Here's what the enemy never wanted you to discover. Every chosen one carries a scroll in heaven. On it, an assignment, a burden, a sound, a name, a place that will change everything. Tonight, this very night, God is opening yours. Your scroll doesn't look like theirs. Some are called to preach from platforms, others to protect in silence, some to sing healing over nations, others to stand as watchmen in the gap. But yours is sacred. And it's been kept hidden until this appointed hour. Think about Jeremiah. God told him, "Before I formed you in the womb, I knew you. Before you were born, I set you apart." Jeremiah 1-5. But here's what shocks most believers. Jeremiah didn't feel ready. He said, "I do not know how to speak. I am too young." Yet God had already written his assignment before time began. Your age isn't your disqualification, it's your credential. You think you're too old? Moses was 80 when God called him to lead a nation out of bondage. You think you're too broken? David was an adulterer and a murderer, yet God called him a man after my own heart. You think you've made too many mistakes? Paul was literally murdering Christians before he became the greatest apostle who ever lived. Stop measuring your calling by your failures. Right now, I need you to understand something that will shatter every lie you've believed about yourself. That restlessness you feel at 2 a.m., that's not insomnia. That's your spirit trying to break free from a life too small for your assignment. That anger you feel when you see injustice, that's not bitterness. That's the fire of heaven burning in mortal bones. That loneliness you carry even in crowded rooms, that's not isolation. That's consecration. God has been separating you, not punishing you. Your scroll contains 3 things that will revolutionize your understanding of why you've walked through hell and back. First, your assignment. It's not what you do for a living, it's what your life does for eternity. Martha thought her assignment was serving dinner. Jesus revealed it was choosing the better portion. Mary Magdalene thought her assignment was survival. Jesus revealed it was being the first witness of resurrection. Second, your authority. Every scroll comes with divine backing. When Moses' scroll was unrolled, his staff became a serpent that swallowed Pharaoh's magician's serpents. When David's scroll was revealed, 5 smooth stones became giant killers. When Esther's scroll opened, an orphan girl became the savior of a nation. Third, your appointed time. Ecclesiastes 3:1 says, "To everything there is a season and a time to every purpose under heaven." Your season isn't rando, it's calculated. Your timing isn't Latate's precise. But here's the part that will break you open. Your scroll has been sealed because the assignment written on it is so powerful, so world-shaking, that if God had released it too early, the enemy would have destroyed you before you were strong enough to carry it. Every rejection you faced was protection. Every closed door was preparation. Every silent season was incubation. You weren't being punished, you were being prepared for something so significant that heaven had to hide you until now. Do you hear that? That rumbling in your spirit? That's the sound of your scroll being unrolled in heaven's court. The wax seal is breaking, the ancient words are glowing, and angels are stepping back in reverence because they know what's about to be downloaded into you tonight. If something is breaking open inside you right now, tears you can't explain, heat in your chest, trembling in your hands, don't resist it. That's your spirit, remembering the call it was given before it wore skin. That's your divine DNA activating. That's heaven downloading your original programming. You've been wondering why you never fit in, why you always felt different, why crowds drain you but solitude restores you, why you see things others miss, why you carry burdens that aren't yours, why you fight battles for people who don't even know your name. Now you know. You're not broken, you're chosen. You're not behind, you're being positioned. You're not forgotten, you're being prepared for a divine deployment that will make hell tremble and heaven applaud. Type "unroll the scroll" in the comments right now. Say it out loud. Let your voice carry that declaration into the spiritual realm, because when you speak agreement with heaven's plans, things shift in ways that human logic cannot explain. Your scroll is opening. The question isn't whether you're qualified. The question is whether you're willing to step into what God wrote about you before the foundation of the world. Because once this scroll is fully unrolled, once you see the magnitude of what's been prepared for you, there's no going back to the small life you thought was enough. But what's written on your scroll will shock you to your core. Listen to me carefully, chosen one. Not everyone who calls themselves chosen actually carries a divine assignment. There's a difference between being religious and being recruited by heaven. Tonight, I'm going to give you the 3 unmistakable markers that prove God has placed His hand on your life for something greater than survival. These aren't feel-good platitudes. These are spiritual diagnostics. And if you don't see these 3 signs operating in your life, you need to ask yourself a hard question. Am I truly walking in my calling, or am I just playing church? Mark number 1. It costs you something personal. Here's what the prosperity preachers won't tell you. If your assignment doesn't bleed, it's not your burden. Real divine assignments come with a price tag that only you can pay. God doesn't hand out easy assignments to His chosen ones. He gives them costly ones. Look at Abraham. God didn't say, "Hey Abe, take a nice vacation to the promised land." He said, "Leave everything. Your country, your family, your father's house, and go to a place I'll show you later." Genesis 12:1. That wasn't a suggestion. That was surgery. God was cutting away everything Abraham was depending on besides him. Moses? God didn't say, "Go to Egypt when it's convenient." He called him from a burning bush in the middle of nowhere and said, "Go back to the place where you're wanted for murder and demand freedom for 2 million slaves." Exodus 3:10. That assignment nearly killed him. It cost him 40 years in the wilderness, his reputation, his comfort, and almost his sanity. David. He was anointed king as a teenager, then spent the next 15 years running for his life in caves. 1 Samuel 16:13 tells us, "The Spirit of the Lord came upon David from that day forward." But between the anointing and the throne was a valley of tears, betrayal, and bloodshed. So let me ask you something that might sting. What has your calling cost you? If the answer is nothing, then you're not walking in it yet. You're still playing in the shallow end of God's will. Divine assignments require divine sacrifice. They demand that you lose your life to find it. They force you to choose between your comfort and God's glory. And here's the part that separates the chosen from the casual. The chosen always choose God's glory, even when it breaks them. Mark number 2, it blesses others more than you. The second mark of a true divine assignment is this: the oil wasn't for you, it was for the empty jars around you. Your anointing, your gift, your calling, it's not about your success. It's about their salvation. Elisha understood this. When the widow came to him with nothing but a jar of oil and mountains of debt, he didn't pray for her to win the lottery. 2 Kings 4:3-4 says he told her to gather empty vessels from all her neighbors, not a few, but many. Then God multiplied her oil until every borrowed jar was full. She had enough to pay her debt